brand new, hot, solid epoxy table. Regular $700, it was on sale for $250. He carried it from the mall, which is right around the corner from his house, to his home. It freaked out everybody when it was. Oh, I know he can. Trust me, this, I had to fight for this one picture while he was up there. Oh, don't take my picture of that.
Hey,
For his
Jennifer.
I seen
birthday.
algae growing on that lake.
Hey, Herbie, have you ever got a water drip over your head there?
That's what it looks like now.
Looks like it's hitting June.
I had to fight for that picture. He goes, don't take my
I
picture.
figured the mayor's just trying to put the water torch on me.
Hey, that's my maiden name.
Second floor lately?
Yep.
Nothing up there that's causing it?
Yep.
Well, this is it in the second floor.
Oh, that's right.
This is the roof.
Yeah, this is the one picture I had to fight for while he was out for his birthday. Of course, Joe was like, here, they're painting their figurines and everything.
Why don't you get a
That they
roof man to
do.
do it?
Joe's like,
Herb gets some drip on.
okay, dear.
Do you want to read the thing from words, or do you want to talk?
We don't know what the other one is. This is one side of his room. His house. When he has time. And then this is one side of their living room. Brand new lazy boy couch, sofa couch.
For guests or?
Yeah.
Permanent resident.
No, yes.
Been there, done that.
And then this is one of the other sides of his room. Yeah, he got a nice house. Oh, yeah. I know. And it's 3 stories.
Generally just closet, yeah, but that's because you get.
Well, yeah, but still, you know, when you go in the front door,
Doing good.
all of the bedrooms are that big.
Appreciate you coming
And
and
the
saying
middle
hi. I
floor
asked you when you were
is
standing,
the
sure looks
kitchen.
spiffy.
dining
Oh,
room.
thank you. Appreciate it. I figured I'd address for the last meeting.
With it being all wood floors and everything.
Well, that's.
You got that in the
Yeah.
They like a little plastic.
US cabinet? No, it's bigger in Texas. Well, when I bought it at the Capitol, it was only this big. And I brought it back here, and I was like, we must be back in Texas.
He freaked out.
You lost your eraser.
I know. It was
Oh, yeah.
knocking.
He sent us this picture. Ramen noodles with
10 seconds.
sauce. Yeah. I'm on his side.
Okay, see you already? All right, we're going to call this meeting to order at 5:30. Let's begin with a roll call.
Sheena Martinez, District 1.
Paul Carey for District 2.
Phil King, District 3.
Councilman Burrs is absent today,
Herb Dyer, District 5.
and Darren Schroeder, Mayor. If you will please stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for the invocation. First to the American flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
and the Texas flag.
On the Texas flag, I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Okay, and we have Pastor Deardle. I can never say your name right. From Friends of Christ Church.
That's me. Father, we come to you asking that you would bless the leadership you've given us, that you would give wisdom, grace, honor, and peace. We ask, Lord, that you would help us as members of the community to support the decisions that this council leads. We thank you, Father, today for this meeting and everything that happens there in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you. Thank you. Next time I'm just going to call you Alan, is that all right? I can do that one.
Everybody else just says, hey, you.
All right, next item is citizens' comments. Before we have citizens' comments, I just want to make sure that everybody knows when you come up for citizens' comments, please feel free. We don't have a sign-up sheet. We welcome anybody who wants to speak. You will introduce yourself, state your name and your address. Please keep all comments to 3 minutes or less. And just understand that part of legal responsibility, we cannot respond to anything that you say during, if it's not on the agenda, we can't respond to it. If it is something that we're covering during the agenda, we can address it at that point. And if you want follow-up to it, otherwise, please make sure that we have your contact information so we can do so. So if anybody would like to speak for citizens' comments, please come up.
Hello, Ken Smith, 811 Lower Lacoste Road. I have some questions about the Castroville Utilities and making the property owner responsible or co-signing on it. So I'd like some clarification on that and hopefully maybe some discussion.
Okay, thank you.
Houston Marchman, 1616, is this one? San Jacinto Street. So good evening. I'm here regarding agenda item number 17, proposal to change or stop action on historic district codes. To begin, I'll make a reference. I got a phone call from Mr. Carey on December 20th, complained about the new code, that he had to go before the HLC to get the permit for his carport. He went on to say it's not fair. Issues like this were what drove him to run for city council in the past. Understood. I'm here to counter that. Item number 17 is the community benefits of a historic district greatly outweigh a single person's, grievance over having to take one extra step to obtain a building permit. So my first question, as I settled with it, was, why is it a problem? I don't understand. We haven't had the chance or opportunity to hear the request for permit yet in the HOC, right? It's one extra step, and that part didn't make sense. The other thing about, as I've gotten into this with historic districts, is this is how most of them work. They have a district that encompasses not only the historic houses, but also the zone where everybody lives. And the reason they do that is to protect the infield, protect what goes in those places, so it doesn't impede the nature of an historic district. Historic districts, to me, are like national parks. They're to be cherished, and they're to be protected at all costs. That's how I feel. And now that we have an historic district, that's why I think we at least ought to have the chance to let the process work before we change the code. The district also offers us, as a community, we're talking just the code that you guys recently enacted that came from 2016, is it prevents high density, as we saw, structures that are out of scale with our community, it covers, and building codes that don't support pioneer homes rather than impede them. So I'm asking the council to reconsider and or maintain the historic district as it is written to protect old historic Castroville and her citizens. So and to note, there's nothing in this historic code that prevents Paul from creating his carport. It's one extra step. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I will comment, we are going to be discussing this, so please do stick around for that item. Great. Would anybody else like to speak for citizens' comments? All right. Next item is the consent agenda. On the consent agenda, we have minutes for December 12th, 2023, regular called city council meeting. We have accept historic landmark board member resignation letter and review application submitted for an open board position. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll move we approve.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes.
Just like to thank Richard for his, Rick for his service over the years and service on other committees as well. So
Absolutely. All right, next on the mayor's report, I don't actually have a presentation on this one. It's pretty straightforward. So we have been, I think that everybody knows that one of our biggest challenges right now is the traffic that's happening. If you look at what's happened over the last 10 years, traffic has just gotten absolutely ridiculous. We've been trying to work with TxDOT. If you look at, and I'll review this for the people that haven't heard this before. So the right-of-way that TxDOT has going down Highway 90, coming into town is roughly 300 feet wide. That is, if you look at 410 just north of Highway 90, from the edge of the access road to the edge of the access road, that's about 300 feet. That's how much space that we have on the TxDOT right-of-way coming into town. It narrows down somewhere around the Circle K, around that, where the 471 south goes. It narrows down to closer to 250 feet, and then right at the river, right on the other side of Lower Lacoste and 471 north, it narrows down to about 100 feet. It's actually 100 feet going all the way through town until you get up to 3 points at the top of the hill, and then it opens back up to 300 feet. So this is a big challenge that we've had. We are this bottleneck, this choke point, and we always will be, and especially as traffic gets worse. It's been a very big challenge. We've tried to do some stopgaps with the northern route that will hopefully keep up with the traffic, but it will not alleviate it. What we truly need is something that is more substantial, that is a TxDOT road, that is something that they can handle, that can handle more traffic to keep it from crashing down in the middle of town. So the challenge that they've had is that they don't have funds for that. There are different areas. There's the regional planning organization, which we are a part of. I'm actually the vice chair on that, which is great. We can come up with lots of ideas and suggestions, and they got no money. So you can't do anything with it. So we have been working with the county and with TxDOT, with the, it's called the
Alamo Area Metropolitan Planning Organization.
MPO, the Alamo Area MPO, the Metropolitan Planning Organization. They do have substantial funds, and they are, part of their charter is to incorporate the urbanizing areas, and with 15,000, 14,000 lots in some sort of development between us and San Antonio, just in Medina County, not including Bexar County, that puts us in that area. So we have been working with them to include us into that. The county has been great. Our new county commissioner came from TxDOT for precinct, what is that, precinct 1?
Yes.
Precinct 1, and she has been absolutely amazing. The county judge, our county commissioner, Larry Sitter, has been really great about working through this. So we are working to get to that point. Hopefully we will be asking council for an agreement on going into that. I'd actually signed something saying specifically that we do want to be included in that. It does not, they don't force anything on us. It doesn't change anything except the fact that we have access to more funding and to be a part of the metropolitan planning, including what happens in western Bexar County and now eastern Medina County. What we're striving to do is to create it all the way out to, oh gosh, I'm drawing a blank. 193, going to Blanco, is that what that is? 173, thank you.
Bandera.
So, yeah, Bandera. So 173 all the way down, encompassing all of the cities. So it would go a little bit past Hondo. It would go a little bit past Natalia, Divine. It would encompass basically Medina County and the major cities in that. So we're working to do that. Hopefully we'll be able to get some funds. Anything that we do with that, understand it's a 10 or 20 year process, but we got to start it now. So that is what we're doing. Something else, there's a couple of other things that were not listed on the mayor's report, so I'm going to expand the scope of this. One, Darren Ham has been, so he is our Director of Tourism and Business Development. One of the first things that he did for us was come in and start standardizing on some of our literature, some of our signage, some of our brochures and our pamphlets. He actually just won an award. It's a very prestigious award for some of his work on this. Scott, can you go into a little bit more detail about that?
Absolutely. So, and I appreciate you highlighting our employees. You know, anytime we can brag a little bit, it's not bragging if it's true. I think that's the Texas witticism.
Witticism?
Right. I don't know. But He received what many people would consider a lifetime achievement like type award, something that people aspire to for their entire careers. He applied on behalf of the city of Castroville for some of the design work he had done at basically their posters and things that he had made for tourism and parks, and had submitted those. This award was originally called a DESI. The annual competition was the award recipients received DESI awards or DESI designations. It's sponsored by the, I want to make sure I get this right, American Graphic Design Awards, so AGDA. But this year they received over 9,000 applicants, and his was chosen among others. I'm just going to read a brief paragraph that's from their website. It says, our 60th GDUSA, that's again American Graphic Design Awards, anniversary showcase reflects graphic designers' shape and service to commerce and culture. Winners run the gamut from traditional to new media, from inspirational assignments to bread and butter projects, from large creative agencies and departments to boutique design studios and freelancers, and of course student work. From established stars to rising newcomers, and from red states and blue, this annual competition was originally founded as a DESI, as I said before. So, again, for a lot of people, they work their entire careers and never receive this, and we're very, very fortunate that we've been recognized in this way, and it's all credit to Darren. So, I wanted to give him that recognition and spotlight he deserves, and we'll probably mention it again at the EDC meeting Thursday.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And then the final is, I think that a lot of people are aware of the fact that we are going through, every 5 years, by law, we're obligated to update our master plan, our city master plan. We're a little bit behind on it. We started to do it right on time last year and took a break to get a little bit of education before we started on it. So we did take a little bit of a break, and now we're in full force in implementing the revision of the master plan. We've set up a set of public hearings because a master plan has to be representative of the entire community, not just of city council. And so we set up, we had our first, it was a DNA analysis. It basically looked at Castroville to say, what is Castroville? What makes Castroville Castroville? And the goal of this whole project is to help us to grow as Castroville and not as San Antonio, and not as California, and not as New York, and not as anywhere USA. And so that is our goal in this. And so we're encouraging everybody to come out. The next dates are on our website. They are the, remind me, the
16th, 17th, I believe.
16th and 17th. They will be directly next door at Elsa's Hall, is that correct? At the same
Yes.
place where we had done our education series. Please come in. We've got them at different times during the day. We're inviting the entire community. This is primarily for the citizens of Castroville, but we are a community, so we're asking people that are, core community members to come down who have a vested interest in Castroville, who have family here, who really care about what happens in Castroville. We would like everybody to come down and make your opinions known. We have stated some assumptions. We have talked about the way that we believe things are going, so we want to challenge our assumptions and to get thoughts on those assumptions, make sure that we are being guided by the people that we represent. So if you want to be represented, if you care what happens in Castroville, please come to these meetings. This is only the second of, how many do we have? Six?
Yeah,
Seven?
there's a bunch.
We have a bunch.
There's going to be a lot of opportunities. I do have the details. Would you mind if I read them real
Please.
quick? So this is a long web address, so I apologize. But there is a link to it in our app. I believe there's a link to it on our website. But it is castroville.mysocialpinpoint.com. castroville.mysocialpinpoint.com, and that'll tell you everything about this UDO process. It's a fantastic site they've put together. The event for the 16th, which is next Tuesday, and the 17th, next Wednesday, both days will be at Elsa's Hall, as we just mentioned. This is kind of an open studio and table talk session where you'll be asked to help dream up what Castroville will carry from the past and what is most important to the community and what will define its future. And you can show up between 10 and 11, between 1 and 2, or between 6 and 7 on both days. The second day, on Wednesday the 17th, they will have kind of a closing presentation from 7 to 8. So if you participated on Tuesday, I'm going to show up again Wednesday night and just hear what the closing kind of comments are, that'll take place from 7 to 8. But again, it's 10 to 11, 1 to 2, or 6 to 7 next Tuesday and Wednesday, right here at Elsis Hall next door.
Great. All right. And that is it for the mayor's report, the mayor's and Scott's report. Thank you, Scott. Next item, we have the board liaison reports. We'll start with the Airport Advisory Board.
We just met yesterday, and they wanted to let us know that they have a map created of where planes can park for the total solar eclipse. That way, as you know, people are starting to make their preparations if they want to fly in and everything, that they have a plan set up for that. The skydiving has, I think he said, about 100 to 150 people that are going to skydive during the total eclipse.
Wow.
So, yeah, so a lot of people coming in for it.
Wow.
They do have a recommendation regarding the airport board. Brad Lauderdale, they are asking that he be replaced because he has not participated in a meeting all of 2023. So they are recommending that he be removed and his position filled with one of the other 4 applicants that have been submitted for the open vacancy of all 2. In March, April timeframe, Dream Flights will be doing their requalifications for their Spearman pilots before they get dispersed out in the United States to start this year's run of Dream Flights across the country. So we'll be having some more pilots coming in to do their requalifications and everything. So more business coming. They are also working on the emergency disaster plan for the airport. That way they have all the phone numbers and what to do and who to contact and everything. So they're going to be talking with Chief Kohler and Chief Cook. That way they know who to contact in the event we have an airplane crash or something for fire response and everything. So.
And Mark Chadwick is awesome. Like he's puts together all the county plans, and every time we have an event here, I'm saying this more for public, right? You know this, but when we have an event here, big or small, Mark helps us coordinate because he is our emergency management coordinator for the county. He will help us coordinate our emergency response. So, for instance, we just had old-fashioned Christmas. There was an emergency response plan, an ERP that had been put together for that event. Mark helped put it together, and he wrangles the chief and Public Works and everybody else that needs to have a seat at that table. So make sure that they get with Mark as well.
But that's it.
And we are going to have Daryl from Dream Flights in, I think it's the second meeting in February. He'll come and give us a presentation, so thank you for highlighting that. That's great having him.
Yeah.
Second meeting in January, right? Or February?
No, he wasn't able to make January, so I think we're moving into February.
Okay. I couldn't remember if you or I were reaching out to him, so that's good.
I reached out to him.
Perfect.
Yeah, we had a
All
great
right.
conversation. He's really excited about supporting the city and setting up stuff with us.
And one other thing that they requested is putting in a plug again for looking at maybe getting a part-time airport manager. They know Brianna is going to be quite busy with the UDO and everything, so they like to put the push again for even a part-time airport manager. That way things don't fall through the cracks.
All right, next is Historic Landmark Commission, Councilman King.
I had a meeting, and I left my cell phone at home with my notes on it, so I'm going to go off memory, and Priscilla's going to correct me when I'm in error. One thing is they were updated on the current city ordinances that date back to 2000. They were approved in 2016, codified in 2017, related to the Historic Landmark Commission ordinance. They also reviewed one case of where there was a nonconformity where someone had done some work, changed the appearance of a house, and they recommended that that's going to be forwarded to the code compliance people for them to issue a citation or whatever that formal process is. They also got some additional discussion and instructions on how you go about enforcing issues with the people who are not in conformance. You work without coming before and getting the certificate of appropriateness on the properties. And if I remember right, there was another one that was approved, correct?
Disapprove the signage.
Oh, that's right, there was one on the signage, and that was disapproved because it was not in conformance. But there wasn't another one, an individual brought something that was approved, or that was the meeting before last?
Could you tell me the 2 items on that?
Just the 2 items on it, thanks, so that was it. And all the, really, and again, Rick Bay's leaving and resigning, that kind of took me by surprise, but there were some really good people on that board.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, next we have Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, and that's Councilman Dyer.
They meet next Wednesday.
Okay, perfect. And then Planning and Zoning Commission, Councilman Carey.
We haven't had a meeting since November, so there was nothing to report.
Great. All right, thank you, everyone. Next item is public hearing on a request for annexation of a tract of land known as KF Flat Creek LP, containing 123.23 acre tract of land called Tract 1, being a portion of a 154.17 and a 131.46 acre tract of land called Tract B, all being of a 41.58 acre tract of land called Tract 2, all of 41.46 acre of land called Tract 3, and all of a 48.41 acre tract of land called Tract 4, described in an instrument recorded in the clerk's file number 20180023006, official public records of the John Fisher Estate Land Division, lying in the John Fisher Survey number 5, abstract number 1269 of the L.M. Collard Survey number 97, abstract number 1259, and the Romanus Whitman Survey number 4, abstract number 1348, Medina County, Texas, adjacent to the city of Castroville, Texas, city limits. This is, yes. Okay, we're going to open the public hearing at 6:53. 5:53.
That's our time with that analog.
I know, we're used to
An
being
analog
later.
clock, yeah.
We're used to being later. If I may, Mayor, I would just speak briefly. We're in the public hearing portion, so anybody who, I'll just introduce the topic, and anybody who wants to speak to it is welcome to do so. This may, for those of you who've been paying close attention to our agendas, this may seem like we've talked about this. It's because we have. The first thing we did was not all of their property was in our ETJ, and so we went through a separate annexation process to bring that property into the ETJ. So we had several meetings and several public hearings on that, and then that got done and concluded, and then we had our first public hearing on the actual annexation of property. That was at our last meeting, which would have been the early meeting in December. And then we're now at the point where this is the second public hearing, and then we're going to annex in. This is, just for those listening and here in person, this is the property that is just west of Alsatian Oak, or just east of Alsatian Oak, sorry, the Flat Creek development. They are annexing in as part of the development agreement the city did with them. One of the requirements that we put on developers is if they want to do some type of arrangement with the city where we try to improve their development, we require they annex in, and obviously that helps the city pay for the services that those people are going to use regardless of whether they're in the city. Many of those services get used either way. So that's what this is. This is in accordance with their signed development agreement and what they're doing. This is a good faith effort on their part to actually annex in. The next stage is for us to agree to the utility services agreement, where we outline who's going to pay for what and when we're going to build it out and everything else to bring the water and sewer, et cetera, to them. And then we go through a PID, so they will have a, whatever it is, $36 million, $26 million PID that they will request as part of that development agreement as well. That is for a portion, not all, but a portion of the public infrastructure that will install that. Again, that water, the sewer, the streets, the sidewalks, the other things that are considered by law public infrastructure. So those are the next steps tonight. After this public hearing, this item will go before you for actual annexation, and then expect the utility services agreement to be discussed within the next, hopefully, we've already been working on it for about 6 months. within the next several months, and then the PID will be probably sometime in that timeframe as well.
Great. Did anybody want to speak for the public hearing? All right, so we will close the public hearing at 5:56, not 6:56. Next item is consider and take appropriate action on adopting an ordinance for annexation of a tract of land known as, oh, well, the backside of this was cut off, KF Flat Creek LP, containing 123.23 acre tract of land called Tract 1, being a portion of a 154.17 and a 131.46 acre tract of land called Tract B.
You could just say we're going to annex the tract of land just discussed in public hearing if you'd like to.
I would like to. Okay, consider and take appropriate action on adopting an ordinance for annexation of the tract of land just discussed. Do I have a motion to adopt that ordinance?
So moved.
And second.
Great. Any discussion?
Question,
Yes?
because we know access onto Highway 90 is do we know how they're doing, progressing? No? Okay.
No, I haven't, keep in mind, their access will come through the Dickerson tract, and you can see that the Dickerson tract, that's the commercial area in front. They've already done a lot of dirt work there. I believe that those negotiations are like,
Okay.
in some ways, Terry's the one that's kind of having to do that with TxDOT.
Okay, I just didn't know if we had heard, because we
No.
know that.
And I don't know actually where things stand with Alsatian Oaks either. It looks like they're made progress. I believe, I recall hearing just before the holiday break that it sounded like they'd come to some kind of terms with TxDOT, but I don't know the details.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay, that's all.
And this does include, if you remember the development agreement, it does include their portion of the northern route as
Right.
well? Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. All right. Sorry, right under the wire here. Next item is discussion and appropriate action on application submitted for an open position on the Airport Advisory Board. Let's see, this is number, let me find these real quick, 11. So if I may, do we have, is this three, Burton Carlo Wise? Would you like to introduce yourself? What we ask, I thank you for showing up. What we would ask from all of the applicants is talk about who you are, what your benefit to the airport board is, why you feel like you're the best fit for this, and what you would like to accomplish on it.
Okay, my name is Burton Wise. I am a pilot and aircraft owner. I have been had an airplane at the hangar or at the airport now since early 2019, January, February, something like that. So I have a vested interest in obviously the use and health and well-being of the airfield here. As far as, my background, I'm not a professional pilot. I don't fly for a living. I'm actually in IT. I work for the U.S. federal courts in San Antonio. But I looked at all the airports around San Antonio, and Castroville really, to me, was the one that appealed the most. I live on the northwest side of San Antonio, and this airfield out here was just, in my opinion, of all the GA airports in San Antonio, the best suited, in my opinion, for general aviation, as far as where it's located, the community around it, and things like that. So that's why I decided to base out of Castroville. As far as why I'm the best candidate, I don't really say I'm the best candidate. I'm just a candidate. It's just something that when I was informed of the Open Advisory Board position, I thought, you know what, that's something that interests me as a member of the Castroville Airport, and I just felt like it's something I should be involved in.
Great. All right. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Thank you for your willingness to serve. All right. The next one is Harrison Vaughn.
All right, I'm Harrison Vaughn, and I too am a pilot and have a plane out there in a hangar. I have a hangar at Bulverde Airfield also, so, comparing and contrasting benefits and things they do wrong, I think is a benefit. I'm a family guy, wife and 2 kids, 7 and 9 years old, and I am a partner and operator of North Park Chevrolet here in Castroville. So I think, as far as experience, managing situations, managing people, decision-making, problem-solving, I have quite a bit of experience in that. I have a degree from Texas A&M in business management. Again, I think, entry into the public service is something I should be doing. I think our company is a big part of this city, and I'd like to be more involved in some of the decisions that are made. And with my pilot background, I thought the Airport Advisory Board was a fortuitous opportunity for me. So hopefully y'all feel the same way.
Great. Thank you. And thank you for everything else you do here. All right. Next up is Kirby Turner.
Yes, thanks.
Thanks for being here. I do not live in Castro. Born in Austin.
Do you mind speaking into the microphone?
Sorry about that.
That's all right. We'd just like to hear you.
I was born in San Antonio. I was born in Austin and raised in San Antonio. It was about 250,000. So I've seen a lot of growth, which,
Yeah.
and I've experienced some of that. But I'm a private pilot. I have an instrument commercial rating. I have about 4,000 hours civilian. I have 1,500 military. I have 100 combat flying. I'm a retired flight surgeon, colonel from Kelly, Laxmith, and I was the chief flight surgeon for the 433rd Air Wing at Kelly. I have had my aircraft stationed at a number of airports. I've been at Castro for about 3 years. Prior to that, I was at San Antonio for 25. I left there because the city became noxious to GA. And I saw the handwriting on the wall, so I moved. I had to wait 2 years to finally get a hangar, which was probably about, I guess that hangar's probably about 1930 in style, I think. But besides that, I've also had my plane at Austin, San Antonio, up at Vernon, up at San Angelo, and up at Temple. And the longest I've been was about 25 years in San Angelo, 7 years up at Vernon, and 10 years over at San Angelo. But the reason I moved here was because of the location and getting out of San Antonio. I'm sort of concerned that that same type of environment may seep into here, and it's not the best for general aviation. And the airport is very important to a city, and how you manage it can either be positive or destructive. And unless all of you are pilots, I assume that's the reason we have an airport advisory board, for people that have some of the experience so that they can give you advice and you can make your decisions. I think I would bring a lot of good experience to that in relationship to the different situations that happened in the other places that I've been and had those things happen. So, and like I say, I understand I'm not local, but they have the wall down at the border. I just continue it all the way around Texas and just put it up there, and that'd be fine. Okay, my ex-in-laws. I mean, to be that bad, my ex-in-laws are related back to the Alamo, so we stay a long way. I move very slowly because I want the airport to have a positive impact on the community and have a good environment to live in. You know, not just economically, but socially, so that you can, the people like that. And I hear some of what you said today about all the traffic and stuff, and you're being proactive about trying to not become a little San Antonio. I think Castroville should stay Castroville, same with Beeville and same
Amen.
with all the rest of them. But that's my opinion. That's just the way I am. But I appreciate you all listening to me. Thanks very much.
All right, thank you, sir.
Yes.
All right, next we have Hunter Stuckey.
Hello. I'm Hunter Stuckey. Thanks so much for letting me speak to y'all this evening. So I'm interested in a position on the advisory board because I believe the airport is a big asset to the city. I've been involved in aviation my entire life. I've been doing it as a profession for the last 20 years. I'm currently with FedEx on the 777, flying all over the world. I'm also a pilot and instructor with Dream Flights. So that's what ties me to Castroville. I'm out here all the time on my days off flying the Stearman. So, and I think we've seen you a couple of times out. Yeah, a lot of you. So, yeah, there's, I'd love to be given the opportunity to help solve problems and generate ideas that would be mutually beneficial, not only to the airport, but to the city and to the community as well. I believe that the airport is a resource that should serve the city as well as the community. And I've also got help. This is Jenny back here. She does a lot of volunteer work as well, not only with Dream Flights, but she is the CFO with the Commemorative Air Force over at Stinson, and she also runs the cadet program. And so we're big believers in getting youth involved in aviation. So that's one of the things that's kind of important for me. So I'd like to see more youth involvement, whether that be mentorship or additional programs, things like that. But primarily, I'd love to just be able to assist the board with budgetary issues so that the airport remains self-sufficient and a financial asset to the city, as well as help generate other ideas to get the community more involved. So thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak with you.
Great. All right, thank you, sir. All right, and then finally, we have Kenneth Lang. Lang. I think Lang, yes.
Thank you.
Check, there's two different ways. I thought I got it right. Good.
Yeah, Lang, you got it. Kenneth Lang. I'm a little different than the rest of the people here. I don't own a plane, so I'm a landowner adjacent to the airport. Our property butts up to the south end of the runway, and I've been here all my life. I've watched the planes go over my head and my family's house. Since I was a little kid, I grew up at the baseball fields out there, and after what happened with the zoning regulations, I would like to become more involved, maybe bring another perspective with connections through the community of landowners around the airport. So that's what I'm here for. I'd like to become more involved after seeing the things that go on. We are not in Castroville proper, so I'm not a voter. So I'd like to have some input, know what's going on more in the community, and so to be able to help control the destiny and the future of Castroville. So that's why I'm here. Thank you for your time.
Great, thank you. All right, before we move here, I wanted to read something so Councilman Merz cannot be here tonight, so I wanted to give him a voice. He said, I wanted to give a statement relative to agenda item number 11. That's this one. Several candidates before you have impressive aviation-related credentials. However, we already have 6 board members with aviation experience, none of whom are citizens or live partially close to the airport. While any of these aviation-minded candidates can comment on what changes and decisions will improve the airport for pilots and business owners, none can say what it is like to live under the approach paths. Mr. Kenneth Lang can. He has a balanced perspective, a reminder that every decision at the airport has its effects outside the brand-new airport fence. His perspective and the perspective of his neighbors has been underrepresented in past airport decisions and planning efforts. In addition, having Mr. Lang on the board and in the loop makes him a valuable ambassador to his neighbors near the airport. This will be critical as we move toward a second attempt at the airport zoning ordinance. For this reason, I strongly support Mr. Lang for the position and hope you will too. May your meeting be short and uneventful.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have a choice. I've got to say thank you to all of you, and no matter what the results of council's vote tonight, please come to the meetings. You don't have to be on the board to be a part of it, to be involved with it. Contact the board, contact your city council representatives, contact myself. Let's brainstorm ideas. The idea is that the airport it's a great asset to the city. It is great as an asset as a community. Looking at Mr. Lang's perspective of what is it like to be around there. I live not too far away from it, and I really enjoy that. They're not right on my house, but sometimes they're pretty close to it. But I think that it's really good that all of you are willing to step up, and please continue to be involved. This is what makes us a community. Okay, so that's it. Deborah, we have currently one open position?
Yes.
That's an alternate.
An alternate position, okay. And then potentially, based on next council meeting, we'll have another one available as well.
Correct.
Right.
So just for y'all's, I almost brought it up during Sheena talking about the Airport Advisory Board, just for context, because I think this happened prior to being there. Brad Lauderdale was a full voting member on the board in 2022 and was moved from that position to an alternate position for the same reason, because he wasn't able to make meetings. We were going through an awful drought. He sprays crops for a living. You don't spray anything when it's when they're all dried up and there's nothing there. So that became an issue. He moved to the alternate position. He had expressed an interest in trying to stay involved, and then still wasn't making meetings. So that's how we ended up, just for context, where we are right now. We're appointing an alternate position to replace Brad.
And this position is for a 2-year term. If we do replace the other one, next time it will be for a 1.
Okay. So I'd like to open up to discussion first. I'll start on this side.
When Mr. Lauderdale's position becomes open, will these same candidates be considered for that position as well?
Yes. Assuming we don't have any additional, if we have any additional, then we'll put those on as well. And just for your understanding, we have a policy where we review them. We've reviewed them last council meeting, and we're making a decision. If somebody else applies, then we will review that during a council meeting and then have the vote the following council meeting for the open position.
I don't have any other questions.
Okay. Questions, comments?
So we won't make a decision tonight.
Yes, on this one, for this position, this alternate position, we will.
Because we discussed this at the last meeting.
Right.
Well, it was
It
on
was
the
in your
consent
package.
agenda. Y'all had the applications that you're looking at tonight on the consent agenda for your review before this meeting, and it's the same ones.
As in our previous meeting.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. That's what I was a little confused with. Okay. And if you don't mind my asking, who did the Airport Advisory Board recommend?
They did not.
They recommend all of them.
They recommended removal of Brad.
Oh, that was.
Oh, there's, the president's here.
Oh, there you are.
Yes, please. I'll open this up.
Oh, Chair, sorry.
So I don't really believe that it's our position to make a recommendation. All of the applicants are, worthy. They have great backgrounds, probably far superior to anything I do. So from our opinion as a board, it really does fall to the city council to evaluate each of them and make a determination from that perspective.
Great. Thank you.
I guess I wish you guys all weren't so.
But it doesn't mean you can't be involved.
Every one of them.
Yes.
Every one of y'all. It makes it very difficult, but I have no questions.
Councilman Carey?
We have 2 full board members expiring in 2024. What is the date of those appointments?
That'll be June.
In June, okay. So we're
All the
looking at
boards
doing
except
this-
for the HLC are the end of June.
June, okay.
And then they have the option to
I just
resubmit.
I didn't remember when that was. It was right after the election, that's right.
It's right there.
No questions other than that, thank you.
All right. Councilperson Martinez? Okay, great. Do I have a motion to appoint one of the members?
I make a motion to appoint Mr. Lang in alternate position number 2 for the term for the next 2 years to go through 2025.
All right. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
I'll second it.
too late, sorry.
You were too slow. All right, I have a motion and a second by Councilman Carey. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Lang, for your participation, and the rest of you, please, come to the meetings. Be a part of this. I really appreciate you stepping up to this. It helps to get involved. I came to city council meetings for years before I ever was dumb enough to, was inspired. I play around about that, but it helps to get involved with it and to be a part of that, and your opinions can be heard, your thoughts, your ideas. It's great that you're all willing to step up to that, so thank you.
And to be clear, there's 3 positions that are coming up. One's another alternate position, much like this one. It's a 1-year term, and then there are 2 full board positions that will come up in June.
But being appointed as the alternate does not preclude that appointee from running for one of the permanent positions.
That's correct.
Great.
So hang on. Hopefully the next meeting, or at least by the beginning of February, we'll be naming someone else to the position 1.
Full position, yeah.
Great.
Thank you.
All right, thank you all.
Thank you.
All right. Having an overqualified group to choose from is
Very
a little
rare.
daunting, yes.
Yeah.
For us.
All right, next item. Discussion and possible action on increasing funding for the Castroville Cares program. For that, we have Scott.
Yeah, so I did do a write-up for you just to kind of give you some history, and importantly, we created, when we made some rate modifications in 2022 to become effective last year, we established, 2021, to become effective in 2022, we established this Castroville Cares program, and we rely on the South Central Texas Community Alliance, or whatever it is. It's a group that manages these types of funds and programs for a number of other utilities in our region. And so they manage our funds as well. But part of our agreement with them stipulates who can receive funds, not by name, obviously, but how they qualify and are determined as eligible to receive utility assistance, and then how much money they receive and how often. So all those things are in our agreement with them that we set as a city. When we adopted those, you may or may not recall, I certainly can't recall clearly, but because it's been 2 years, but I do recall us having some dialogue, some back and forth about what amount and how often and that kind of stuff. And so we set all that. I'm saying all that as a preface because there was some discussion about, well, maybe we should, with our rates, the rate modifications we're making now, I'm avoiding the word increase because really and truly it depends on the rate and whether the actual rate's increasing. Some of our water customers, for instance, their rate's going to stay flat because we didn't affect the base rate and we didn't affect that rate. However, with those modifications, the suggestion was, well, maybe we should increase the CARES funding. Well, the fact of the matter is we've only distributed, I think, around $5,000 of the $25,000 that was allotted in the current year's budget. So we aren't even coming close to using what we've allotted. What I would like to do is have a presentation from this group that oversees the funds, just so they can provide you reports and feedback and be here to maybe engage in some dialogue with the council. Unfortunately, they weren't able to make it tonight, and I don't know when we'll be able to set that up. But since this was something that had been put forward by the council, I went ahead and left it on the agenda in case y'all wanted to have some discussion. I gave you the agreement in there. Again, this is, I think, positioned for action if you wanted to take any tonight. But my recommendation would be either to review the requirements for eligibility, because those can be adjusted by you. Review how much is currently the level of support people receive and how frequently they can receive that report or that assistance. All of those things would it'd be my recommendation to adjust those before you add additional funding, because we aren't using what's there, right? So again, this kind of is an opportunity for y'all to have some dialogue and determine whether you want to make changes, but certainly staff's recommendation is not to increase that amount because you aren't using what's already been allocated.
And I think we learned a lot more once we actually get the presentation. I know that you were working on getting that, but through the holidays can be a great time and a very challenging time. All right, I'll start over here again.
Well, I was surprised when I read this because this is the exact opposite of what we were told at the meeting when I brought the subject up about increasing it. I was of the opinion that we had used all the money except 5,000. And that's the way it came across to me in the meeting, and that's why I suggested that we should consider raising it. What I would like to do is, I agree with you that we need more information. What I'd like to know is more details about how many people in the city applied, what was the primary reasons, the kind of information that we can look at to figure out which criteria maybe we can lower so that more people can qualify. Because with our recent changes to our rates, I think the problem is going to be exacerbated. There's going to be more people who probably aren't going to be able to pay their bills. So I'd like to get that briefing and get some details and then consider lowering the requirements.
Great.
I don't really care about raising the amount of money if we haven't used what we, as I said last time, I was suggesting doubling it, but I would withdraw that now. I mean, I don't see any reason why I would support increasing the amount of money.
Sure. Okay. Any other discussion?
I agree with what Herb says. I think we need more information.
Yep.
I agree with that too. I also would wonder if we are promoting this program as much as we can. I don't remember seeing anything in my utility bill on it. I don't really scour the utility bill much for anything like that.
We generally, so this isn't something that's promoted until but it is, when people come late or have issues with their bill, we make them aware of these programs.
So generally, it's problem generated. I mean, it's the information is generated when there's a problem. Well,
I agree with all of them. I can't make a decision unless I have all the information.
more information.
Yeah, and we wanted, to Scott's point, we wanted to make sure that we weren't ignoring it. We weren't able to get it scheduled in time, but we wanted to at least have that discussion, give an opportunity to talk about that. So I think everybody just consensus that we'll wait until we can hear from them.
The standards that are established by the CCSET are probably pretty well vetted. They're probably pretty well thought out. I think they're the ones who set the standards, not us. So I don't know.
We had some, when we set the program up, we got comparative data from the other programs and what they use, and you all had kind of some lanes to pick between, right? And it basically has to do with a percentage of the poverty level of established by the United States. So poverty level changes every year, and that's the way ours is stipulated. It's based on a percentage of that poverty level, which I think right now for a single person is $22,000 a year. That's, if you make less than that or at or less, you're considered impoverished. I don't recall offhand, it's in your packet, but we set that as a bar, and that bar really does, it depends on the organization and that kind of thing. So we'll try to get a presentation with some information and details about the demographics. Obviously, they're not going to talk about individuals who receive it, but they can give you some demographic data. Here's who typically applies, and here's what thresholds they have to meet, and here's the demographics of people who applied but were denied, because I think that's really good information to have too, obviously, but that's the type of data and reporting that we have not received from the agency, so I think this is also an opportunity to get maybe more regular reporting from the oversight group.
Well, related to that, yeah, because we set the threshold it's 200% of the federal poverty guidelines, so we doubled that, and so that's really the only thing we can play around with. But it goes on to say that the client may from time to time refer special cases for consideration for assistance for the program. So I guess when you're putting together, have we ever requested special assistance? Let's say there's somebody with 10 kids.
No, because staff doesn't do that. That would be really set, I mean, it really is, you need to give us direction on, at the end of the day, these are public funds,
Right.
And so staff has to have some direction from council on how they're being expended, which is why we do the bureaucratic thing and say, you need to read it written and tell me this. So we can, well, all that really means is there can be some parameters that are set outside of these kind of strict ones, but even those still need to be in writing somehow and conveyed to us as a policy from council. Staff won't make those decisions.
I guess then if we could get some clarification where it says quote unquote, but the customer may from time to time for special cases for consideration for assistance from the program. So the only way that would happen is that staff would have to bring it to city council then said, yes, on this particular case, for this particular individual, we request that be up to 4 because it's a special case because they have a dozen.
And we could, if we had, I mean, again, we just need to understand, well, what constitutes a special case, and there's stuff like that. So is it someone who's, you know, is it based on number of children?
The definition of a special case is that it may not have predefined parameters. It could have some.
Well, not that it doesn't have predefined, but it does, that parameters don't meet the aims and objectives of the specified program. But
so let's have this conversation deeper once we actually get the presentation. We can have the conversation with the people that do this all the time. The thing, I mean, on one side, we want to provide relief for those truly in need. The other thing is that we don't want to set ourselves up for abuse, and it's not a welfare state that we're trying to set up. It's assistance to some of the people in more need.
Darren, I'd like to know if we've had cases that were denied and on what basis they were denied and whether or not those issues could be addressed as well.
Yeah, and I think that's what that's what I was referring to with Herb's request is specifically folks who sought assistance and weren't granted it. What the demographics that we can understand. Well, why weren't they, right? That will help you understand. Maybe what it would take to tweak it.
Do we need a motion to table this, or are we just going to take no action?
Take no action. Okay, next item is discussion and appropriate action on authorizing staff to contract pool improvements upon the award of the TPWD grant.
For this, Mayor, if it's all right, I'll have Devin Frederickson present to you.
Thank you.
This is his final meeting at the City of Castroville. His final day with the City of Castroville will be January the 19th, which is next Friday, not this Friday, but the following. So we're getting our licks in while we can, but we wish him very well. We already kind of celebrated him at the last meeting, but.
Well, thank you, Scott. I'm excited to say this will probably be a fun item to discuss with the grant funding that was applied for last year. We are within the next few weeks finding out the amount of money that will be awarded. We are in the higher percentile for awarding, so this is sort of in the agenda item. It speaks to if awarded, so anything that happens here, if it's not awarded, of course, won't happen. But I brought this item because with the grant funding, the only one that's really time pressing, and by time pressing for this year, you can always wait to do it next year. But when the pool closed for the season, that's our time to do renovations. And with that, the renovations that I brought to you tonight is for the pool enhancements, which are the conversion of the stairs to a beach entry, the addition of a umbrella water feature, and an additional filtration that incorporates that water feature. So with that, there's a multitude of benefits to both of these. They're not just, hey, fun, we're going to create, originally we had brought the splash pad. That's a great idea, but when it came down to it, it put more stress on our system. And with the Lions Park improvements, in my opinion, we needed to figure out another way to do an improvement at the pool that benefited the overall pool. So it adds a little bit of shade, but what it does to enhance the total pool is the possibility of 10 to 15 degrees cooling the pool during the summer. And for anyone that's been in the pool during the summer, it can feel like a bathtub. And so that's an addition. The additional filtration system is an ultraviolet. It's just an additional feature to the pool to help keep it clean. All that stuff really does help. Moving on from there, It also offers a little bit of shade and play area. Incorporating the stairway by replacing the stairs that are currently, if we were to build a pool today, they are too steep of stairs. They don't meet the minimum requirements. So I think it's a good addition. Currently, we meet the ADA accessibility by having the lift. As Jonah's here to attest, that thing is a pain. It's very hard to use. It's not always ideal. We're not getting rid of that, but for a lot of our patrons that may have mobility issues, it's not always the most ideal thing. So with that, by converting the staircase and cutting into our pool deck, I believe from the point it's at now, it's like 8 to 12 feet. I believe it's like 500 plus square feet of additional pool. We will increase our play area. Currently, it drops from the deck to 3 feet, which isn't ideal for any of our younger pool lessons. This would be an additional. This is one of those things where you do something and it has tons of benefits. So not just for mobility, but also for introductory classes. It's a safety thing. So these items I brought to you with the award of the Texas Parks and Wildlife Grant, it would be a $50,000 match from the city. It is a buy board award or a buy board contract. It was done through the company who built the splash pad that are local to South Texas, so they have the availability. And with this, we would be able to immediately start upon award and move forward with the construction and have it reopened in April when the pool opens for I believe the Otters and the swim team are who utilize the pool first. So this is just one of those opportunities. Of course, if you don't feel comfortable right now, we can wait till next year, but it would have to be done during that time. And with also the construction being done to the community center building, might as well have that dirt and construction zone one time, have it clean and ready to go. So is there any additional questions with this item?
Questions? I want to mention, so we did, you might have said it, and we covered a lot of ground, but the Parks Board was asked to kind of prioritize. So we have, just as a reminder, the Texas Parks and Wildlife grant that you applied for is up to $750,000. If we have $750,000 worth of projects, the city can match 1-to-1 up to $750,000. So that means $1.5 million worth of total projects. And we asked the Parks Board to look at their master plan, help us understand what capital projects, how you would prioritize the spending that money, and then direct and give council a recommendation on here's how we recommend spending. So the pool improvements, it's a timely thing, timely issue. It would be a great opportunity to do this type of an investment in conjunction with a brand new building. Although obviously the pool improvements will precede that. But also it's in alignment with what the Parks Board recommended. So I just want to make sure we're clear on that. The bathrooms, the improvements to the Lions Park, and the improvements to the pool area. Those were kind of viewed as the three highest priority items.
And here we're only talking about the pool. I know how buy board works for cars. Talking if you're buying a car. How do you do a buy board on something unique like this?
So we did it for the splash pad too. They have to go through some hoops to get that. They have to be able to meet the minimum certifications. No. It's not minimum. They have to. I want to say last time I looked into it, there was maybe 4 or 5 contractors for pool-related improvements in the state in this area for a buy board. So basically, I think it's some of their hourly rate, project rates. They also partner with the aquatic company that we've worked with. They were an approved vendor or an approved contractor by Vortex. So that's sort of how Vortex was on buy board, and so they have to bid jobs at a predetermined rate.
So buy board is not just for commodity.
Yeah.
It's for construction projects as well, and it's all based on time and,
So if you're gonna build a building and you're doing it on buy board, you wouldn't ask people to submit 3 or 4 different
yeah,
proposals?
you could. So there's certain stipulations for it to be allowed to be on buy board. So it has to be, yeah, although construction of this nature are allowed, it's, still has limitations, right? So to my knowledge, you can get, like, for instance, bathrooms through buy board because it's a limited scope project, right? But if you were to go build a community center, for instance, I don't think you can do that. I'm fairly certain those are not buy board eligible.
I guess on something like this, in the back of my mind, I realize it's a buy board, but I would think you would ask at least a couple of firms to see.
You could. You don't have to go buy board. The reason we want to go buy board, probably in this instance, is just timing. We have a narrow window.
You can't ask multiple, like if
You
you're
you can.
eligible to
You
buy
can.
board.
You absolutely can.
We've done that for the pool heating, we've done that for the splash pad.
We've
We've done multiple
vehicles.
quotes.
We usually get,
Yeah.
we'll still go get more bids, and then sometimes we go with the buy board rate, and sometimes we don't.
But on this, we only ask this one firm.
They've won the last 2 projects that we've done, and also in the past, upon awarding, I go out, and that'll be Jonah's job, but I've asked for bids again to update it, because we have theirs, and theirs exceeds the time limit, even if y'all wait on this. I mean, my recommendation is always to do that. It also keeps our vendors,
So
yeah.
to be clear, we're not awarding it to this particular vendor tonight. We're simply saying, yes, staff, you may proceed with this project, and then we will go out and get the bids, and as long as
So your intent is still to get multiple bids?
Yeah.
I'm clarifying that.
Yes. We used to use Leslie's a lot more, and then this company was significantly less and, had a more availability for repairs. But yes, it's always my recommendation to do that, because like with vehicles, buy board hasn't been the lowest in a few times, a few vehicles. It's always been local. So we've tried to do that.
Well, I guess the good thing about buy board is that if they messed up on a project, then they're not going to be there as a recommendation of buy board. So we got to go into those firms and see it. So based on that explanation, I have no problem at all with this plan.
Great. Do I have a motion? Oh, no other questions? Everybody's head was down, so I assume.
Yeah. Maybe they're embarrassed.
What is it when you assume?
Yeah. I make a motion, we approve this agenda item as written.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Great. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Devin.
Thank you.
We're going to miss you, man.
I appreciate it.
We're going to hunt you down and...
Oh, yeah, and I wish you all the best, and I hope
Likewise.
the 25th, you have fantastic news, and that continues, the growth of the department and the city, and I'll be around. This won't be the last time you see me.
Thanks, sir.
Welcome aboard, Jonah.
Oh, he's been aboard.
Oh, no, I know.
Next item is discussion and appropriate action on adopting an ordinance amending Chapter 14, Animals of the City's Code of Ordinances, providing for additional regulations for the control of and care of animals in the city, establishing related service fees, establishing a penalty of not more than $2,000.
So this is, just to remind you, this was part of that grant that we received for feral cats and helping control our cat population. There are a couple of things called stipulations went along with that grant where they requested changes to our ordinances to be in accordance with the aims and goals of that grant program. We ran those through our city attorneys, so that's why so you may recall that grant was awarded to us 3 months ago. And it's like a 6-month grant. But again, we wanted to make sure that we were taking with all the changes and the state law and everything else, God bless Cindy for staying up on top of that. Anyway, so we sent it to you, you reviewed it, and that's what's in its final form in front of you tonight, is to make those changes so we can fall in compliance with the grant that we've received.
Great. Questions?
I seem to recall last time, a month ago, we shouldn't have these. We should go right when I forget. I can't.
You can show up for Christmas, it's all right.
That's it. Humbug, I don't care about this. I care about remembering the last meeting. I'm joking. There was problems that we had come up with, and I remember you said, oh yeah, we're going to correct those. And
Right. So there was a couple of sections in there where the staff had inserted some language regarding waiver of fee. And generally speaking, the city cannot waive a fee unless it can find a public purpose reason for waiver of fees. Because there are times when a waiver of fee is appropriate and it's an appropriate use of city resources. So what we established in those particular sections is the legal parameters of and established when an appropriate waiver of fee can be, what type of documentations persons have to submit to the city in order to be granted a waiver of fees. And so basically, just a quick example, we put it in here that if a nonprofit organization comes in and says, you know, we would like to, you've got, I'll give you a for instance, we are a Labradoodle rescue group, and you've got 3 Labradoodles, you know, currently, you know, impounded in your animal safety shelter. And we will happily take those animals, get them veterinary care, get them spayed, neuters, and adopted out to appropriate families, and we'll do that at no cost if you will waive the impound fee, you know, for having those dogs in impound. And so staff will go through, you know, verify that they are a nonprofit, and get that documentation, verify that the nonprofit's, you know, purpose lines up with the city's animal control ordinances, and, you know, if so, you know, approve that waiver of fees. And the reason you can do that is because providing veterinary care, adopting animals out, is a function of the city government, but where we can liaison with another group that does the same thing and will take that at no cost to themselves and take on that burden, you know, off the taxpayers, that's a good thing to waive $50 of impound fees versus, you know, what we give them, assisting the city with, you know, sheltering and caring, perhaps adopting. So that is what's been established here within the ordinance itself. There was a couple of cleanups regarding impounded animals and when animals can be adopted out. And so one of the key things there is that simply because an animal owner does not redeem the animal within a specified period of time within the city's ordinance, it doesn't necessarily divest them of their ownership properties or their ownership rights in that animal. So we made a small revision there just to make those portions of the ordinance work correctly. So we do have the explicit statement in there that if persons, you know, are given notice, or if they don't redeem their animal within the appropriate amount of time, they're divested of their property rights in the animal, and that the city can proceed on with fostering out or adopting out the animal without running afoul of any ownership interest in the actual animal itself. And then with the community caps section, that is actually the new Article 8 that's been here into the city's ordinance. And city staff, I have to commend them, they did a really good job in the first go, you know, on doing that. One of the key changes we made, though, which is something that even veteran ordinance writers make, is you always want to make sure that your definition section is just definitions, and that the regulation that goes with that particular definition is in a separate section. So we cleaned that up just a little bit there, and ensured that the exceptions that are allowed under the new state law are written into this ordinance. So, you know, the long and short of it is, normally under Texas Health and Safety and Texas Penal Code, if you are giving shelter, food, and water to, quote, a stray animal, it's no longer a stray animal, it is your animal. However, the Texas legislature has adopted this new rule that says, you know, to help curb the feral cat population, persons who do that and provide veterinary care and then release the animals back out, you know, to wherever they were trapped or located at, would not be running afoul of Texas law be determined to be the owners and their ergo abandoning out animals by setting them back out in the wild. It's a little bit strange, and these are new laws, but feral cat management has worked in other locales, so I have no reason to believe it won't work here. But at any rate, we've got the language in there that ensures that if somebody is doing these things, that they do have a defense to prosecution, and they are accepted from the actual regulations of the city's ordinance. So, long and short, those were the major changes in here. There was a couple of little ticky-tack grammar things that I corrected, but that were not substantive in any way. And then ran just a general overview to ensure that all the rest of the provisions of the animal care ordinance are still compliant with state and federal law. And at this particular point in time, the city's ordinance is compliant.
And I got one other question.
Please.
Under animal care, Article 5, related to ducklings, chickens and ducklings. And I go up to Tractor Supply and I see that, they have the little ducklings there that people can buy when they're a couple of weeks old. And this seems to say that it may not be sold in quantities of less than 25 to a single purchaser. So you wouldn't be able to do that if it's in the city, right?
Right.
So if Sheena up there wanted to sell ducklings out of the South Texas Hardware, they couldn't do that. And I take it Tractor Supply is not in the city, right?
Tractor Supply is in the city.
Tractor Supply is, yes.
So they wouldn't be able to do that
That's
the way it is.
correct. Now, my thing is I have no idea how you can tell a chicken or duckling is younger than 8 weeks, but I suppose that those persons that are knowledgeable would be able to.
They get really big. Really quickly.
Okay.
We have a lot of experience with that.
They're little.
Right.
When they're really cute, they're less than 8 weeks of age.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and Tractor Supply sells them at, I think they only keep them for 2 weeks, I think they said.
Yeah, what I would suggest to y'all is that some of these regulations are very stringent for a more rural type of community. But, to the extent that they've been working, or at least not have had a lot of pushback on them. Which one?
That's number 5. I'm sorry, it's item D.
Section 14.
Thank you.
Article 5, Section 14, I'm sorry. Yes,
Maybe y'all may
So
look
this
at
was
it
already
as
in place, but as we review this, we're saying,
maybe it should be something different for commercial. I don't know.
Well, it's why is someone selling 25 ducklings? You can only sell 25 or greater numbers. That's kind of
That's a lot.
commercial also. And I don't know why it's in there anyway. But
That's been there a long time.
Yes, and certainly, that's one of those things that falls into policy decision realms. I can tell you it's legal to have that type of provision in here, but whether it's a good policy decision or not, I leave that to folks who do, who are more familiar with animal care than I am.
well, like we talked about last time, I get real nervous about having an ordinance that we say, well, we're just not going to enforce that one. But I guess, and at the same time, I'm not ready just to jump forward and say, well, we should scratch that or change without some thought. But it seems like if we approve this, then someone would have to go to Tractor Supply and say, you can't sell your ducklings anymore, or your chickens anymore.
They don't sell full grown. They don't sell over 8
well,
weeks.
these are also already in place.
Yeah, these are already in place. And
These
they,
are younger than 8 weeks of age, may not be sold in
Oh.
quantities.
Or less than 25. They have to sell at least
younger
25.
than.
Yeah, see?
So we should remove that because Tractor Supply is doing
Well,
it.
I mean, that's what they're doing, and nobody's ever thought about it, yet that's what the ordinance says you can't do it. And but I can't imagine why anybody would say, well, yeah, if it's less than 20, well, I mean, why even, if it's 25 or greater or less than 25, what does that have anything to do?
There probably was a reason years ago.
Yeah, I'm willing to bet there probably was, some validation for that.
It's kind of like down below, you can't give away a live animal or fish or reptile, and they used to give those at the carnivals. Used to be goldfish.
Well, I will just say this, you might want to look at section 14-33 as well. If you're looking for stuff that you're not really following.
1433?
Yeah, 14-33. I don't think E, subsection E is being followed, because I see animals being sold on that lot every weekend.
But is that in,
That lot's not in the city limits.
that's it,
Ah,
yeah.
so tractor, okay,
Yeah.
never mind. But, well,
We
yeah.
tried.
I would say that if it were because of the abuses that are happening of those animals, I've talked to Petunia's Rescue Friends, and they get a lot of those. That's problematic. If there were a way for us to enforce it, I think that we should, but I don't think that we can.
I know our police officers
But
have
we need
many
to be
times went
cognizant.
there.
Well, I'm gonna say, okay, we just need to be cognizant, I need to be aware of that. Because I do think there's been, so they're in the county, but I think there have been people that tried to set up shop kind of across the street at the car wash.
So they couldn't do it there.
But they can't, right?
Right.
I just need to be aware of that.
Sure. We just need to make sure that our officers are aware of that. There's too many puppy mills right now that are doing that kind of stuff. Bad.
Right, and I mean, I remember when we discussed this like 3 or 4 years ago, it was specific, you know, we can't control it in this area, but yes. And we do have nonprofits, you know, part of this says that nonprofits, so of course the animal rescue, during Fiorillo Friday, I think we were out there.
So do you wish to make a change to 14-51?
I think you should
let's
remove that.
I think we should, I make a motion, or not
Well,
really make a
let's-
motion, that'll be part of the motion, but yeah,
To
I would
remove
suggest
D.
we remove that.
So the motion would be to adopt the ordinance as presented with the following
changes.
With the following, right?
Additional changes.
Right. Councilman Dyer, you had a question,
Yeah,
comment?
When this came up originally, it was associated with the grant for, I think, $1,800 or $2,000, something like that, for community cats.
Yep.
And so we were going to modify the ordinance to include the community cats, which you've done. I didn't realize we were going to rewrite the whole ordinance.
No, I think we're taking the opportunity to make
Just
some.
update it.
Yeah, to update it.
My question is, when the grant money is gone, are we prepared to increase the budget to replace it for the next year? I mean, it's going to become a recurring cost. Once you implement this community cats, you're going to have cats out the ears all over the city. We already do.
Well, no, well, this is intended to reduce the population, so this isn't going to.
We're not trying to
Well, it's supposed to help us by getting them spayed and then
Right, exactly.
reducing the overall population. But
But it's
there's still going to be an annual cost associated with this.
No, this is a grant-funded project, so one of the things we've done as staff is try to look for grant funding wherever we can in light of our budgetary challenges, especially with capital-type projects, but especially even on an ongoing basis.
But is the
So
grant every
it can be
year
reapplied for.
replaced?
It could be reapplied for potentially, but I would, as far as y'all are concerned, I would operate in the assumption that once this grant is terminated, this program will terminate as well.
It's a short-term
Unless,
project.
yeah, unless you all, like, as staff, I'm not gonna say that in some future agenda or some future budget cycle, we may come to you and say, hey, here's a service expansion that we'd like to try and offer at some point, but no, there's no intention at this stage to try and
So we're
fund it beyond.
if this is approved, we're gonna expend the
You've already approved the
$1,800 and then we're gonna stop.
Yeah, you've already approved the grant. I don't think it's 1,800. I want to say it's 18 grand.
19,000.
Yeah, it's 18 or 19,000.
18,000.
This is only one portion of that. There's the amounts of money that are in the grant can be, they're kind of segmented out as to how much you use for which portion of the grant. But it's $19,000. So again, we're going to use these grant funds and run this program, and then we'll continue. Our staff will continue to look for other programs that we can utilize that may or may not be related to feral cats. But yeah, we're not trying to create permanent.
And if I could just interject, one of the key things that the provisions do, because if the city chooses not to continue to budget so that city staff are doing community cat caregiving, what this does is it allows an exception for those persons out there in the community, if they want to spend their own money being a community cat caregiver, they can do so without running afoul of the city's animal control ordinances. So if even a city determines, at some point in the future, we don't want to budget money for this particular particular type of program. It doesn't have to, but neither does it prohibit, some person out there in the community who wants to, on their own dime continue the program.
So it's not our intention at the next budget cycle to replace this grant money with budgeted money.
Correct.
We're just going to use the grant money and then decide what to do afterwards.
That's correct. I'll make no promises about what staff may or may not request during the budget cycle, but again, the budget is a policy document, so services are up to you all to determine service levels.
All right. And I guess one other question, we upped it to $2,000. What was it before that? Do you remember?
The fee, you mean?
The maximum fee, and not more than $2,000.
Is that the maximum fine?
Maximum fine.
Right, fine, penalty. So what was the penalty, what was the maximum penalty before that? Do you remember?
The $2,000 was in it when I found it, so I'm not sure what y'all had prior to.
Because it says in establishing a penalty of not more than $2,000, that remained the same. Okay. I thought that got updated just based on that. Okay, no problem.
On section 14-71, item number 2, the keeping of an animal, can we say, for example, that
Which
Howell
section
Park?
again?
It's 14-71, section 2 is animal nuisance. It says to keeping of an animal which howls, barks, or whines. Can we change that maybe to keeping of an animal, comma, for example, that howls, barks, whines, crows, what have you? Because we do have a lot of people that complain about roosters that constantly crow all night long. There are other animals, so.
That's
can we-
look at Article 7, next page over.
Okay.
Under enforcement, and it's under 14-81, section 1.
Okay.
A.
Crowing, whining, barking, okay, it's in there.
Okay. So with this being the case, if we have people that call reporting this, something will be done then?
I'm pretty sure that we already have nuisance calls that are in our, well, I'm just.
Yeah. They're calling, the calls are being done, but the animal still remains. And so, yeah, that's why I'm trying to.
I know we haven't removed in a couple of days.
Yeah. What I will say just from, is in other places I'm assigned as, as municipal prosecutor. And one of the things that is problematic is enforcing this type of requirement is that it requires those persons complaining to be willing to be witnesses in cases. And frequently people are glad to call in and maybe complain about it, but they are not as glad to follow up on the second part, which is.
Oh, not the people I know. Oh, no, the people I know, they've been, trust me.
But that's, again, we're delving into the enforcement side of things.
Right,
The
but-
evidence is already there. We can talk about enforcement, and I'll
But,
take
yeah,
that.
no, I'm just putting it out there because, people are, get upset and irate, and they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, they're
Just
calling.
let me know, again, it's kind of, we go back to what
Oh,
we've
yeah.
done before. Let me know specific instances, addresses, times, and I'll follow up with them, and I'll give you kind of where things stand.
Awesome, thank you.
All right. Any further questions?
Well, so here, it used to say that you could have up to 10 cats on a property, but it had to be confined within a structure. And we've scratched that out, and now said that you can have up to 10 cats, if they're sterilized, both these cases, to be on the property, which means they're not gonna be confined to a structure. What was the reasoning for that?
I don't know if that was required under the.
Oh, I'm sorry, this is section
I kind of think so too.
14.7.
It's been a minute since I looked at this bill, because like you, it had me well, but I think that was one of the sections, because if it's pertaining to cats and it's a change, it's almost, I can almost guarantee it was, we didn't, staff didn't say, well, we ought to change that. I think those were part of the grant requirements, was to the cats didn't have to be confined. I guess everything's free range these days, Bill? I don't know. Because if they're neutered, I guess the idea is if they're neutered and tagged, then they don't really need to be confined because they aren't a danger to the public at that point, right?
I have neighbors who have outdoor cats, and if you have one outdoor cat, you can easily have 6.
Right, but if these are neutered, yeah.
I guess I was thinking about as a nuisance to a neighbor, because cats don't stay in your yard.
Right.
And so if my neighbor had 10 cats, all neutered, sterilized, but if they had 10 cats in their backyard, then I would think they'd be in my backyard constantly. I guess I could go get one dog, and that way they wouldn't.
I have visions of I think it was the Bud Light commercial, like the herding cats. So I'm in business with that right now.
So you think that was scratched because that was one of the.
I'm almost positive it was something that's part of the grant.
A part of this grant also was for deterrence for, say you didn't want that, that supplied that equipment for us to give as a usage, and then the people, the citizens to buy it if that's what they would like to do, to help deter. But there's statistical data that, this community or this group has, and they truly believe that by making this effort, it could have an effect for years to come on shutting down on the overpopulation of the cats. And then, you'd asked about additional grant funding. We had barely even gotten this item approved, and Curl had contacted them about relocation of animals, and they covered all of the adoption, all of the fees for any animals exceeding what the city could take in, and paid petunias directly. So there's a lot of options here, but this group has really, we've had grant involvement from community members, but this isn't a community member. This is someone who just cares about animals, and they've already been stepping up to the plate to send money and work with us.
By the way, I don't believe with this program, the neutering program, because years ago, 20 years ago, A&M, they rounded up all their stray cats and neutered them all, and just released them to get on campus. And so they were, based on that, the program appears to be working well. That's my question.
Okay. Any other questions over here? No. So I think that what we're looking at is approving this with the removal of section 14-51, section D about chickens and ducklings, and then changing 14-71 A5. If this is a part of the grant, that we remove, we add the sterilized and we remove the securely confined within a structure. If it's not a part of the grant, then we should probably add sterilized and secured within a structure. Is that what I'm hearing?
That was what was in previously. The secured.
But we aren't.
Well, the addition of sterilized.
We're not entertaining making that change because that was part of the grant requirement.
Are you sure that it was part of the grant requirement?
No, I'm not absolutely positive.
Okay, so what I was saying is that on this item, if it is a part of the grant requirement, we would approve as read. If it is not one of the grant requirements, then we would write it as sterilized and secured confinedly within a structure for up to 10 cats.
Got it.
Does that work? Okay, do I have a motion?
I make a motion as read by you with your.
Did you want to make the other change as well?
Which other change?
The other change was in 14-51.
Yeah, I already just said that one first.
That's that? I'm sorry, I apologize.
Yep.
No, obviously not listening.
Hey, you're looking out for me, I appreciate it.
I make a motion as read and instructed by the mayor.
Great. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Great. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Deborah, let me know if you want me to give you better.
You always make it home.
I'll make it, I'll write it up for you. Okay.
Thank you, Devin.
Thanks, Devin.
I won't sing Happy Trails yet, but enjoy the rest of your evening.
We should have kept this till later so you could hang out with us a little bit.
No.
Okay.
I'm just sticking around. I don't know where you're going, Devin.
Next item is discussion and appropriate action on authorizing construction of fiber internet service for city facilities. Scott, do you want to present this?
Sure. So there's a write-up in your packet about this as well. We got the good news is we got our usage out of the build that we did with ComZoom. We built fiber to all of our facilities. So that was Public Works, PD, City Hall, and the library. They subsequently extended it to the wastewater treatment plant and the new parks building that's up there, so they actually have fiber as well. We didn't pay for that build. We paid for the others. Unfortunately, when ComZoom sold to Spectrum, Spectrum informed us that the way they do their fiber internet's different, and they're going to need to build out a new system, and therefore, if we want to stay on the fiber, then here's what your new cost will be. And that's what you have in your folders as an example of the 1 month and 3 year contract prices. So in light of those additional increases, staff started to look at, okay, well, what are our other options? And it just so happened that at the same time this happened, we found out Verizon, this is about between the July and August timeframe. Well, about that time, Rise Broadband made us aware that they're building out the entire city with fiber in the ground. So we thought there might be some other options, and one of the first things that we started to explore was building a fiber loop of some kind between those same facilities that we would own. So unfortunately, what we paid to build out by ComZoom, we didn't own, and we didn't pay full freight. I mean, they charged us a fee, but I mean, now looking at what these costs are, we paid a fraction of what it actually cost them to build that out. Be as it may, we don't own it. So the idea was we build out something we own, and that's where I have kind of the estimates of what that cost might be. I don't know. I'm giving you a range because I don't have an actual proposal to show you. I've requested that. I'm working on getting some kind of proposal of what that cost would look like. But the idea is that we would build and own our own fiber, and then we would pay for the bandwidth through a provider or providers. And I've already contracted with Spectrum to bring fiber to City Hall, so we have to maintain our connection on some level. So I've already contracted to have that fiber, the initial fiber installed at City Hall, but I'd like to hear your thoughts about, okay, do we, just bite the bullet and pay the increased price, which you can see it goes from about $2,200 a month to $3,300 to $3,600 a month in internet fees for all of our facilities? Or do you see the value in building out a looped system where we could essentially pay between $1,000 to $1,100 a month, which would be about half of what we pay currently, and then own our own little network just for our facilities? The payback for that would be dependent on the cost. If it costs $10 a linear foot, you're looking at about 80 grand plus the hardware. And Mayor, I don't have any idea what that hardware might cost, but let's just say it's an additional 15 grand. I don't know. Is it higher than that?
Probably.
Yeah, I don't know.
It really depends.
We'll say it's 25.
Well, and let me, if I may,
Yeah.
so I have a lot of, this is what I do for a living, so.
Really?
Yeah, kind of. So I like the idea of pursuing it until we get actual costs back and we can make a comparison. I don't think that we should approve actually doing it. I think that we should encourage Scott. I appreciate the fact that you're looking at this, and we've talked about this before. It's not he says a loop. I just want to correct the terminology. It's not a loop. It is a connection, just in case somebody is
What is it
retentive like
called?
me.
It's not what do you call it?
Connection.
A connection. No, there was another term we threw around too. It wasn't loop. There was something else. But anyway,
you could do a collapsed loop, but we're just getting technical there. But the fact is that we own the poles, we have the connections, we own the infrastructure, we have the ability to do this. It is a great idea to look at it. I don't know that it's a great idea to do it, because it's not just the matter of running that, it's also service entrance, and it's the equipment that it takes to run it, and the amount of cost that it takes to manage that stuff. So I think that it's a really good idea for us to continue to look at this, even if it's for only certain buildings, but it's finding that itemized cost of where you go. Like I look at their map right here, and I think that we've got some extra linear footage in here that we probably don't require. But in looking at the map that you've got right here, if you want me to get detailed, I don't see any reason why we would have the one that goes down Paris Street that goes to Public Works rather than going just a single one past the police department and then back up to Public Works, across to the library, and then over to the regional park. Looking at the pole lines, the pole line follows that. So I think that we definitely need to follow the pole line, but.
Part of this is dictated by where the poles are.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
how we get to the point. But you don't think we need which segment?
Well,
you're saying
that's getting into too many details, but my point is that I think that we should continue to pursue.
You're saying the two parallel, I'm just making sure, the two parallel lines, you've got some redundancy there. Do I look at-
You don't have redundancy of repetitive.
Yeah, repetitive, whatever, yeah.
Extraneous footage.
Okay. All right.
And we don't know what RISE is going to charge, right?
Correct. That's part of the problem. Right.
We also, I mean.
I think
Well, no, RISE is not doing this, so I want to be clear. I reached out to RISE to see if, maybe that was an option. It's not an option. Because I thought, well,
They do
maybe we could
residential
share
service.
their duct bank and do this underground. They're building underground all over the city.
You
They
asked
don't-
them about commercial services, or you asked them about building out?
I didn't ask them to provide us commercial services, because what I was exploring was the ownership of our line. We can get service, if we just want to go shop services, we can just go shop services.
I think we need to boot.
Yeah.
We need to shop both. I mean, honestly,
Right.
let's take a look at, with RISE coming here, if they offer commercial services. Sorry, Herb Scott.
This has been exasperating for the city, I know, because even in the residents, I mean, I've been trying to deal with ComZoom and Spectrum and RISE, and number one, there is no information available now. They want to talk to you later. They want you to sign up, and then they'll give you the details later. So it's very difficult. I have a question, though. Have you thought about going to VC3 and explaining our problem and asking them to give us a recommendation for the best possible solution, the most cost-effective solution that we might be able to do? Because I hate to go out on our own and build out something.
This is done in coordination.
And then.
Well, we're going to pay
find out
that, I'll
it's
just
not
say
gonna
that
be usable.
their opinion won't be completely unbiased, because they're going to pay, we're going to pay them to then manage and maintain that hardware, and it'll be, their fee will go up, because they're going to do
They
our
are
internet.
supposed to be our
But we
partner.
have, but the short answer is yes, I've already reached out to them. I also reached out to ACS. I've had multiple conversations with Spectrum. What started this was I was advised that they were going to go dark as of January 23rd.
Yeah.
I subsequently spoke to someone else at Spectrum, and I don't have a strong, warm fuzzy that isn't the case. So, frankly, it doesn't matter, because we aren't going to be able to build it between now and January 23rd anyway. So I'm a little concerned that our internet, we'll have internet at City Hall, because they're supposed to install that here by the 23rd, but everywhere else that we have internet.
Well, ComZoom is
I
going to
don't-
send packages on the 16th of January. Anybody who's a ComZoom customer today,
Yeah, those are residential, yes.
they're going to send packages to their homes.
Yeah.
And on the 23rd, everybody who has service is going to have to make the conversion to Spectrum, because ComZoom will no longer be operating.
Right.
So if you don't make plans, you're going to go dark on the 23rd of January.
Right. That's to change out the equipment so that you're actually on their service. So, but again, I don't know what the plan is for our commercial sites here. I've been operating under the guys that I needed to work something out with. That's why I'm seeking your input. Do we want to yeah. I don't know how much time we have. That's my concern. But even if we.
Let's reach
yeah.
out to their
Yeah, the same guy.
government, the same guy.
I reached out to him before.
Okay, I can give him a call.
But what we're talking about is, do we want to build our own fiber network? And I heard earlier that we just had a fiber network installed that won't work because of compatibility issues.
But
So-
that wasn't ours. We didn't own it.
Right, but if we build one, are we going to have the same issue?
No, because the issue really wasn't about, we would control it. The reason that became an issue is because we didn't own it. It wasn't our equipment. We didn't get to make those choices.
When
have
they
no
sold
staff.
the back-end system that they're using,
That's
one
why you
uses
use
one
VC3
system, the other one uses
and
another
ACS.
system, and the lines don't necessarily, I think it's
They won't
actually,
talk to each other.
I think it's actually a really good way for them to make extra money from us.
Yeah, that's what I'm,
Kind of bottom
I don't
line.
know if that's the case or not, but that's.
Yeah.
Because
my
most of us
suspicion.
don't know the answer to that question.
So the worst-case scenario is we'd have to sign it for a year contract with
For a higher
Spectrum at a higher fee, and then see what happens next year, because I take it they don't do month to month, it's going to be a minimum 1 year or
That's
something.
correct.
Yeah, and so worst-case scenario, we just look at that. But I think trying to make a decision like right now, and it's not gonna go into place anyway, I would think, you know, we need time to figure this out.
I think it's appropriate to do another one-year contract on this, because no matter what, there's no way you're going to get it built out by January 23rd.
January 26th.
Well, when I initially started, that's the issue. When I initially had the conversations, I was working with another engineering firm, and the cost of that engineering went, you know, from, I think we can do that for less than 10 to now it's 12, now it's 15, now it's $29,000 to do the engineering for the fiber build. Now that included about $11,000, we talked to the mayor about this, about $11,000 of pole, analyzing the poles, make sure they can handle the weight. I don't know that was entirely needed, right? So there's not half of the cost, but there's a third of the cost was that. But still, it's a lot of money to pay for engineering, just the engineering, and then the whole time, I just wanted to see, what is it gonna cost to build though? Hell, give me an idea of the build cost. Well, the engineers wanted to go ahead and do all the planning.
Which engineers was this?
I don't want to say.
Okay,
but
yeah.
It was an engineer highly recommended from another city that built out a fiber program. It actually came through the guy at the school district.
Okay.
So, all right. So is it your direction then to go ahead and inform Spectrum that we want to extend services for a year at all of our locations until we get a better plan together?
We really don't want our offices going dark.
Yeah,
I think it's a
agree.
really terrible situation to put in. I don't appreciate the fact that they're putting us into that. I think that's bad business, and but they got us over a barrel, and that's what these big companies do.
That's right.
I used to work for them, I know. Okay, great. Next item is discussion on SB 2038. What's now, is it still considered SB 2038? It was originated as SB 2038, regarding disannexation of parcels of land over 50 acres.
What I want to say is we all recognize it as SB 2038, so that's the
Yes.
easiest way to represent it.
Yes.
Or you want me to just jump to it?
Well, so 2038 is something that was passed last year, and it was kind of a surprise. I don't think that any of us really, it wasn't on our watch list, not from TML, not from anybody else. It was something that was run through as a part of the anti-Houston movement that our state legislatures had last year. And it allows people in our ETJ to remove themselves voluntarily from our ETJ. So the people that are right on the ETJ, the extended territorial jurisdiction, is a half a mile from all of our city borders. So it is the things that are directly adjacent to us. Those were within our control to be able to regulate the subdivision. What happens when they subdivide? What kind of roads do they have to do?
Or any other development, yeah.
Or any other development. It allows you to have some control on your borders. Removing that, you can have something that happens right up to your borders and sometimes within your city limits in places that are not currently in your city limits that could be any number of things. The county has no ability to regulate zoning, so it really removes any kind of control you have over your borders, over the things that are directly adjacent. So to us, to a small town like us that is 3,300 people with an ETJ that is significantly bigger than our existing land area, it's impactful. So what we were going to discuss was what are the implications of this, and what are any controls that we have around that? What are our options when it comes to it? Just wanted to get kind of an update on, because you guys were researching.
Right. So what I will tell you is that there has been a flurry of, since the passing of the bill, there's been a flurry of litigation activity across the state. The city of Grand Prairie has led a charge in challenging the legislation as it was written. At this point, there is no opinion or ruling that has come out yet on that. legislation, and so we continue to monitor that. There are clients we have some clients, and we know of some cities in and around who are challenging the legislation, but from a different point of view. Some of the legal challenges that we're seeing are related to those persons that have development agreements. There are some developers and property owners who have taken the position that even though that they were part and parcel of the development agreement, that they still have the ability to exit out of the ETJ through the process of allowing new legislation. So that litigation continues to kind of line its way through. It will be a while before we actually get any rulings or anything back on those. Generally speaking, for cities that are in that position, the position taken is that you are contractually beholden to, follow the terms of your development agreement, which included not only would you be in the ETJ, but at some point in time you would also be annexed into the city, because that is how most development agreements are written, right? You get certain protections for a certain amount of time, and then eventually you get annexed into the city. At this particular point in time, those are the two main veins of litigation that are currently pending. At this particular point in time, it's our recommendation that should the city be approached with such type of petition, that the city take no action on it at all. And so that portion of the legislation that says, and oh, by the way, if you don't act on this within 45 days, the next available council meeting within 45 days of receipt of that petition, the property is released by operation of law. So the reason for that being is that, depending on how the outcome of certain litigations in the state come out, the city might be in a better position to then turn around and say, well, because we never actually officially took an action to release you from our ETJ, ergo that law was declared unconstitutional, and therefore, those provisions are not effective. How that's going to work out, not real sure yet. But again, like I said, the litigation continues at a pretty fast clip on those things. It has not reached, and it didn't reach as quick a conclusion as the Death Star bill has. And I suspect simply because it's land use related, those things are going to just continue to grind their way through. At this
The
particular
Death Star
point,
bill was held as constitutional. It was upheld, correct?
No.
It was shot down.
Which one is this?
I didn't realize that. The preemptive bill?
The one that was kind of targeted at Harris County mostly?
Everything was targeted. Harris County.
But Death Star, we're talking about when you say that the preemptive bill that said any law that you have that's more restrictive than what the state has said is now null.
Right, so that's now, they're going through their appeal process, and so it's not done. So the original district court was that was an unconstitutional bill. Right, so the appeals process, continues on with those things. But the way that the bill was drafted by the legislators was that if somebody petitions and they meet all the requirements and they're not subject to any of the exceptions in the petition, they are released from the ETJ or they are released from the ETJ. That is how the legislation was written.
They're released from the ETJ or they're released from the ETJ. So was that a typo?
Either you voluntarily do it or it happens automatically, is what you're saying.
Right, yeah. And so the end result is that the way this thing is currently written is that, if somebody petitions, they wind up, for the most part, they wind up being released from the ETJ. Now, the problem with that is that no one has yet quite found a solution on what does that do if, for instance, there are intervening properties that were, connecting your ETJ then to, a piece of property that did want to and intend to be annexed by the city. That I don't know that I've actually seen a case law or reference to a case, that there's any litigation on that piece. Everybody's just attacked, kind of the whole fundamental issue of release from the ETJ, period.
So think about that. So you've got a 10-acre parcel, commercial development. They're on the border of your ETJ. That ETJ has farmland, some other stuff that's ripe for development that hasn't developed yet. So a dealership would be a prime example. You got a dealership out on the edge of town. There's other properties in between them. Some of them are 50 acres in size. That dealership was allowed to be annexed in because they were contiguous with your ETJ. I'm just re-saying what Cindy said and giving examples. I don't know about. I'm slow, y'all, so I'm doing this for myself more. But if that 50-acre parcel in between said, we want to disannex right now, the way the law's written, you don't have a choice. They're out. Whether you make a determination or not, they're going to come out. Well, then what does that leave with that parcel that had been annexed in based on, what does that mean in the law? How does that work? And those are the type of issues, and that's just one of many, many, many examples where there's going to be a lot of challenges to the law related to the way this was written. So,
But because this is a dedication in what city?
Grand Prairie.
Grand Prairie's the one that's challenging it just as.
But there's a bunch.
But because of that, you can't, there's no stays on, or would the best thing to be if that were to happen, let's say outside of Castroville somewhere, would we not be smart to enjoin or try to attach ourselves to the Grand Prairie lawsuit, or is that even, I mean, I'm not a lawyer, I don't know, I just watch movies.
I don't think we're big enough.
well, and it doesn't, once that determination is going to be made, it'll be made for, unless they do carve-out, right?
Yeah, unless they do carve out.
Which sometimes they will, they'll make a determination and say, okay, you fought us, you won, but we're not going to make it applicable to everybody else. We're going to make it, we'll fix yours, and we'll say for cities and counties of this size, and they'll do a carve-out. That's the only reason you'd want to enjoin is if you see that potential for that in the kind of back and forth negotiations that typically happen, those types of things, but I would anticipate that our law firm will keep their ear to the ground, as will TML, and if they suspect that starts to become an issue, they'll probably come and tell us that, yeah, that's a time when you want to look at that.
One minute, I'm just checking, to see right quick if there's any other update from TML, because I did forget to check them before I came for the meeting. One second.
And right now, we don't have any notion that anybody's going to.
Right. Right now, of the litigation that we are aware of here, closer into to your area here, it's all related to folks that had development units.
Okay.
Right.
Why don't you get back with us on that one, and we'll continue to move on. There was no action. I just wanted to make sure that we had that discussion. We had talked about this before as one of the risks to the city. And hopefully we've got scrupulous developers that really care about being a part of the community and really want to do something that is good for the community. And so that is my hope and my prayer, and that we can work with them to do something a little bit better. Okay, next item is discussion and possible action on historic district ordinance. So what I had committed to, we had in our last, was it in December that we did this?
For what?
First meeting in December.
First meeting in December.
Yeah.
So basically, staff came to us and pointed out the fact that the ordinance that we have in place is, we already have a historic district. If you look at the outlines of that, I think that all but two of us are within that area. But it doesn't really matter who's in it and who's out of it. One of the things that we've talked about is how do we protect the infill? We have had very recent things with people really wanting to protect the open areas. They're wanting to protect historic Castroville. They're much more concerned with protecting historic Castroville from any kind of change, any kind of different ideas, and this is one of the ways to do it. But the fact is that we learned that there was an ordinance that was actually passed in, I think it was 2017 is when it was ratified, 2016, 2017, and it was ratified then. And the question to City Council was, should we enforce this? As we understand the law applies, and we asked our city attorney, does the law apply to this? And we were given confirmation that it does. And so what City Council said was, yes, you should follow the rules. Are the rules correct? There are so many, the way that it was written is very challenging, and it will take some modification that we should do very slowly, very methodically. It's too easy to break something and then try and fix it and you break it even worse. And so I think that we need to talk about how do we approach this? How do we look at the different uncertain, on one side there are good regulations, on the other side there are potentially not so good regulations. The way that it's written right now, I don't agree with it. The way that the intent of it, I totally agree with. But how do we actually implement that? So I wanted to have that discussion and just kind of walk through each. Do you want to go first on this, or do you want me to have council?
No, I think just to, kind of carry over from the last meeting is that, we identified that, there are some portions of the ordinance that are a little bit, and this is just tied to the historic district regulations. We noted that there was some inconsistencies with the use of definitions, having defined certain things. There was some inconsistencies within that section of the ordinance. It shifts back and forth between use of terms and such. And so it leaves, from your legal team's perspective, it leaves a lot of room for interpretation and a lot of room for, for ambiguity within the ordinance itself. And so one of the key things, that we need, and the collective we being, your legal team and city staff is, that clear policy directive is what exactly does the city want to preserve? What is it we want to do? Because one of the challenges, at least from sitting from this portion and listening to persons come to public comments and stuff, is that one of the challenges is we want to preserve historic Castroville, and we want to preserve Castroville and all the good things about Castroville, but we don't want you to tell us how, and don't be too heavy-handed with the land use regulations. And so those two things are incongruent, because if you want to preserve historic properties and you want to preserve historic districts and areas of the city, then you must control the land use. And so I think that's always kind of been a tough dichotomy for the city to come to grips with, which is, it is, as painful as it is an either-or proposition. We either want to preserve historic, have established districts and preserve the districts and preserve the look and feel of certain areas of Castroville, or you do not. Because some of the regulations, the way they are currently written, they tippy-toe right up to the line of being an actual regulation, but kind of fall short of it. And, my observation is that was done purposefully and with intent, to do that, so that you're going to get 98% of the persons that are going to read that. They're going to interpret it as a regulation. They're going to come and talk to the city, and the city's going to say, well, we believe that you need to do X, Y, and Z to comply with the historic ordinances. 98% of the people are going to say, you know what, thank you for pointing that out. You're right. We will take a step back and redraft and review to try to get compliant with the historic regulations. And then you're going to have a small percentage of that says, well, I'm going to point out, this difference in your definitions, and I'm going to point out that you've used certain terminology and certain definitions and certain language in your ordinance that suggests that these are strongly recommended things to do, but not necessarily an absolute regulation the way you have it within your other zoning districts. And so, to make all this, work properly so that there is less room for that ambiguity, we need that clear policy decision. What is the city's intent? Is it the intent of the city and current city council to say, yeah, we have now reached a point where we actually need to get stronger with preserving certain historical things in Castroville, or are we not there yet? And so, certainly, again, something worth discussing and having, but I think until that fundamental decision is made, it's very difficult for us to try to revise and amend in the ordinance without saying, where are we going with this? What is it we're truly intending to do? Because are we there yet? And saying, yeah, we need to put some strong regulations in place to preserve historic portions of Castroville or not.
And so let me talk about I want to be very light-handed in this. I'm not making a recommendation one way or the other. I have my own questions and my own concerns about this. But as I look into this, one of the things that a historic district does give you the opportunity to do is to control the types of building construction and materials. It doesn't have to be just the form. It can be construction and materials. With anything outside of a historic district, if it is in the International Building Code, which includes plywood, it includes tinfoil, I think. Just about. So you can build something incredibly subpar. There was one that was under great scrutiny about 4 years ago that people were really upset about, but it was something that was approved under the International Building Code. And so it allows you to regulate those on the very, like the low end. On the other end, it could allow you to build things the way that the original buildings were built, the way that the new buildings were built. There's a lot of flexibility in how you actually implement this. It doesn't have to be, everything needs to be built as a pioneer home, because not everything needs to be built as a pioneer home.
The issue's more fundamental than that. I mean, the 96 homes that are his documented historical homes, there's no question amongst anybody what that means. We all know what it means. And we have good protection with the Historic Landmark Commission for those 98 property owners. But the 446 or whatever it is that were somehow incorporated in the 2017 ordinances 004 and 005, there was never a vote taken. There was never an opportunity for those 440 landowners to express and get due process. So I don't see how we can tell those people, you lost control of your land to the HLC in 2017. I'm one of those people, and I don't agree with that at all. And I think we need to get some clarification. Did the 2017 law get enacted properly? Was there ever an election? My understanding is if you want to be in a historical district, 80% of the people who live in that district must vote in the affirmative.
That is if you are going to create a historic district?
Yes.
The historic district already exists.
The existed was the 96 homes.
No. There's so what the presentation that handled that was given to council in December, what it walked you through is there's two districts actually created. So it's not, it gets worse. There's two. There's a state district and a federal district.
Right. Actually,
right?
there's three.
There's three?
Or 96 homes in.
96 homes, yeah.
Nobody's arguing about our
Yeah.
96
So
homes. But
those two state and federal, when those districts, according to local ordinance, to establish a local district that has a local authority, you must go through that vote and all of that other stuff. We didn't need to do that because we didn't establish a local district.
And by we,
the state,
we mean-
the city.
So you're
the city
saying the
council.
state and the federal.
The state and federal established.
have done this to us, and we have no say on it.
No. What I'm saying is that the districts that they established, the city, by ordinance, then incorporated into made reference to and incorporated into its zoning ordinance to then allow for regulatory control over those districts that we didn't establish, but we now have. It's kind of, I mean, think about it, it's kind of like a loophole to be able to do that. What staff, when we brought that to you in December, the goal was for council to give us policy feedback on, all right, look, guys, speaking to all of you, we as staff had always kind of operated, and indeed the HLC has operated under the guise that our guidelines only apply to these 96 properties. But in doing some due diligence and research on our actual code and how it's written, that is not how it should be applied. It should
The
be applied.
HPO's opinion.
No.
She's the only one who's given us that
No,
opinion.
it's we verified it with our
verified
local
that.
attorney. Like we that's what that whole presentation is about. So our attorneys have reviewed it. They also concur.
Scott, let me back up for just a second if I can interject. Sorry. So I want to differentiate between two things. One was the district, and one is the ordinance. The district, that's what we said, there were 3 districts, a state, a federal, and our local district that was established with the 96 homes.
But see, I don't know, the 96 homes aren't actually, we have the opportunity to establish 96 individual districts based on those homes.
But they weren't established
But
as.
no, there's not a local, that's what I'm saying, you've never held a vote.
They never had
There's
an
not
election.
there's not really 3 districts, there's
2 districts
there's
and.
2 formal districts.
And an ordinance that protects. the
96 properties.
Right. Okay, so the one thing is the district, the second thing is the ordinance. The ordinance that was there before protected the 90, thank you for clarifying that. The ordinance that was there before protected the 96 properties. Homes, structures, whatever that was. And I think that's kind of ambiguous as well. The ordinance that was passed in 2017 incorporated a district that already existed. So you're not, if you create a district, you have to go out to the public. If you take a district that already exists, they can write an ordinance that applies to that district. And so that's what they
The
did.
district have to vote on it.
No, they don't.
And I'm going to jump in here, and Councilman Dyer, I would have to go back and check prior forms of legislation, but, the local government code as it currently exists allows cities to designate historic districts, and it really just has it really works with basically a 20% protest, kind of the way any other zoning type of decision gets made. And that's been on the books since 2019, right? And so, assuming that even if the city says, okay, here's what we want to do, we actually truly want to designate historic districts separate and apart from the 96, if that's the policy decision that gets made, basically it is the equivalent of a regular type of zoning process, so that if it only requires, if the owners do not consent, the designation or inclusion of the owner's property is approved by a 3/4 vote of the governing body of the municipality. And that's assuming that it goes through the normal noticing process, then it goes through P&Z and all of that. So that is the current state of where we're at. And one of the things that there seems to be a lot of discussion back and forth on what the intent was, whether processes or procedures were followed, and, just, as an FYI, remember that over all of this, there's the overarching legal presumption that if an ordinance is not challenged within 3 years of the date of its adoption, it is legally presumed to be a valid ordinance. And so, that's why I say, whatever has happened has happened. What we need to be focused on is this something that the city wants to be cleaned up? And if so, in what direction do we want to go with this?
Yeah, but if I could just point out, I was here in 2017, and I agree with you, nobody's challenged it, but we've never taken any action as a city since 2017 to make people aware that the 446 landowners lost control of their property in 2017, because it was never enforced. It was never even discussed until the HPO gave her briefing to us and to the, I guess, the other commission, when they gave it 2 weeks later.
Yes.
I mean, all we have is her briefing.
Well, to be fair, what staff said, though, because I don't want us to get, we are where we are. What staff said at that meeting was, look, guys, what we've understood is that your intent was to always apply it to the 96 properties, and that's the way this community is operated, and we can fix that. We can take your code and make it so that it only applies to the 96 properties, but we wanted to make you aware of the situation as it sits. And this is kind of what I was sharing with Phil and the mayor following that meeting. What shocked me about the outcome of that meeting was that the council said, no, if it's the way it's written in the law, then we should be following our ordinances. But you guys are the policymakers.
But what we
Not
said.
everybody said that. It was
Well,
Okay, but that was,
But let's be clear
that
on
was the
this.
outcome.
So I think that what I heard was, not everybody said, but what I heard was, we don't think that the ordinance is correct, but right now, the ordinance is in place, and follow the ordinance. And that's why we're putting it on the city council agenda until we get it rectified. Is that, did I hear that wrong?
I, as one person, objected to that.
You could have
and I
just
was
easily done something
overruled.
else.
Absolutely. But let me just, did I hear that correctly?
Well, I said, if it's the law, we should follow it.
Right.
But when
But
I
it needs
read
to be
the ordinance didn't say what the HPO said it said.
So that is some of the stuff that we still have to work through with this. And I think that we have an issue here, that we have an ordinance that has some significant issues to it, some significant negative impact to a lot of people. And it's not just individuals. This is potentially for everybody. If we do anything, honestly, if we do anything having to do with the historic district, to even to propagate what was done, how many years ago was that now? 7 years ago? Even to propagate what was done 7 years ago, we have to go through the public process to be able to do that.
I agree.
Like, there is no way that we should continue this. This is opinion for a guy that doesn't have a vote. My opinion on this is that we can't do this without a public process. I think it's worth having the conversation. We had an entirely full room here and down there of people that wanted to protect the lifestyle that they've had here for decades or generations. And what we told them was, here are the ways that you can do this. And then we find that we have one of those ways at our disposal. And so to go back to them and say, hey, you know, we had a way, but we got rid of it, so sorry, you're out of luck.
I'm not suggesting that we vacate this ordinance, I'm suggesting that we follow it, because, they did pass this ordinance, it has its own problems. But in this very ordinance, it says, the Landmark Commission, this is the authority of the Landmark Commission, has authority for the applications regarding reconstruction, alteration, addition, stabilization, restoration, and rehabilitation of a structure or property designated, good word, or pending designation as a historic landmark or located in an area designated or pending designation as a historic district. The definitions of those words are in this instrument. None of the area that they incorporated, other than the 96 structures, meets those definitions.
But we've reviewed what you submitted, Paul, and you're wrong. And that's all, I don't want to, we don't need to have a legal debate about this at this meeting. That, the fact of the matter is, because I've sought legal opinion, that's what I'm saying, before we ever presented to y'all in December, I told y'all I had to hear it like 4 times before I finally, it sunk in. The bottom line is, where we're at right now legally, and where you all as policymakers are, is that legally, the way it's written, HLC is supposed to have purview. I'm well aware that wasn't, from everybody I've talked to, that wasn't the intent, and that hasn't been the practice. And so what we wanted to know is from council, do you want us to align the intent and practice with the code? And I fully anticipated that that's what you would say. Yeah, go ahead, align it. Now, I understand that the code was developed through a public process, but it's evident from the pushback and from the challenge and some of the kind of feeling that's been expressed, no one's intent was that I mean, there is an intent to preserve historic properties, but to limit those preservation activities and controls to the 96 properties. Now, there's a separate issue. There's 2 separate issues. Number 1 is the actual list of 96 properties I shared with you all in December. That also, we got to review that, and I'm going to make a presentation and show you, okay, this is what the 96 properties consist of, and this is how we as staff interpret and understand the law to be applied that we're presenting to you, right? So that everybody's clear, this is how this would be used going forward, and ideally that would be consistent with the way it had been used by the HLC, right? And then the other issue is there's applicability that the actual 96 properties that actually be there, and then I can't now, I lost my train of thought.
Due process for the 446.
But again, that goes away if you say, you know what, we just want to take our code that's existing, including the design guidelines that have been developed, and say those are applicable to the 96 properties, as we believe was the original intent.
Well, the intent of the design
Oh, it's the
guidelines
language,
was to help guide infill properties.
Right, well, so again, if you go to infill properties, now you're going beyond the 96.
That's why it wasn't an ordinance, it was
Right,
suggested.
and so again, that's why we're seeking clarity, because if you say, well, we want it to have we want it to have purview over the infill properties as well, that's in the way you get to those infill properties is by virtue of the two districts that exist, the state and federal districts. That's why they were included. So, and I remembered my last
I don't see
training.
them included in here. I'm looking at this and I don't see specific inclusion.
Yeah, because one of the things that I did, only because, you know, I've heard it several times, you know, and heard all the everything with it, and so you guys are familiar with Bryce, y'all know Bryce, and he's you know, he went through it and he gave us analysis and says, you know, here's what I think. But we have a second land use planner, certified land use planner that's on the books. It's not familiar, never looked at it, and I said, I need you to go out there and just take a look at that and tell me what, you know, with you as a set of eyes, you've never seen this, tell me what you think this says and what is accomplished by the city's code of ordinances. And the response came back is that I'm not sure what all the fuss is about. The city has 2 historic districts and they have 96 properties that are listed, you know, as being historic properties. And they have, you know, established some design regulations for that. He said, what's the issue? What else, you know, is there a specific problem that you need me to work on, or do you have an assignment for me? I said, no, that was your assignment. Tell me how you read the city's code of ordinances. And so that is, you know, so that is just, you know, a reasonable person, you know, off the street, comes in and buys property in those certain areas. If they look at the city's code of ordinances, and again, remember that your code of ordinances, if you have a code of ordinances and you opted to codify, the code of ordinances is going to override, you know, any individual intent, language, or anything else in the actual individual ordinance. So that the regulations that actually get put in the code of ordinances is what we have to look at.
So, just for clarification, because I think this is where this got sucked in, Paul, is what you said earlier, and this is to clarify a point that Herb made, and we can have further discussion about, you know, how 446 properties can come to be regulated absent a vote. Because I think that's an item that sounds like may need some clarity. Does it have to go to a vote? Does it not have to go to a vote? What you heard your city attorney say a little earlier was, well, actually, it may not have to go to a vote. Now, I think the reason that the council may think that is that their own ordinances say that it's going to go to a vote if they're to establish a district. So it's not whether it's in state law, but by state law, what the city attorney, I heard the city attorney say is that no, it's really kind of if you have protest of a certain percentage, then it goes to vote. But absent that protest, which is 20% of the affected parties saying we don't like this, then you don't have to vote at all. It can go in under state law. But that's one point of clarity that needs to happen. The reason, and this is the point of clarity I was going to seek right now, Paul, is on those 446, how they came to be regulated is I don't believe you can regulate a infill property that's not deemed to be historic in and of its own purpose. So like, again, we have some discussion about the 96 properties that were on the original survey. Does that include the vacant land or not? And that's another problem for another day, right? But absent that, let's just say there's an infill lot on Berlin Street, somewhere on Berlin, where I live, that no historic houses really there, but you want to control the infill. I don't believe that under current state law, as a general law city, you can control that infill, but for some type of zoning declaration that you live in a special district of some kind, right? That's how those 446 properties got pulled in, because if you want to regulate that, the infill, you have to have some mechanism. And the mechanism the city utilized was the historic, calling that, you know, they developed the zones as historic, and how they developed the zones as historic is they relied on the state and federal designations, those properties, the research that had been done. Again, I'm not trying to argue one case or the other, I'm just trying to explain where things are and how they ended up where they are, and what staff is seeking. So staff is seeking to understand, do you want to regulate the infill?
Well,
which is
let me put out some
concern.
If
or
I
do you
may
want to regulate 96 properties?
Well, I don't think it's all or nothing. The fact is, we're not going to solve this tonight. But what we should solve tonight is we should solve an approval process that is not, okay, I'm stating an opinion. I think that the way through this, because there are so many different ways you can skin this cat after it's been
And it has
There are so many ways, and if we misstep one way, then we cause issues for one set of people. We misstep another way, we cause issues for another set of people. I think that the best way for us to do this long-term is to get some assistance in with people that have experience in historic districts that have the mix, because if you look at the 96, go back to 96 homes and properties, there were only 106 buildings built here in the first 100 years. The second 100 years was, what did I say it was? 76%? So it was almost 8 times that. 800 homes and structures were built after the 1940s. And so there's a whole bunch of things that were built after that even, that, how do we apply it to that? So I think that the best thing that we can do right now is to establish a good, solid, I call it an exception process, an appeal process. If somebody in this area, until we get this figured out, has something that comes in front of planning and zoning, they go in and apply for a permit, then we have a process for them to go through.
Understand the other part, I'm not trying to rain on your parade, but the other part of where I lost my train of thought earlier was that separate and apart from all these discussions we had tonight and about a process and how we weigh this, is the issues that the attorney mentioned about the conflicting issues within the design guidelines because of the way they are written. For staff for you to say to us, well, here's how we're going to, whatever process you come up with, we still have to utilize the code as it's written to tell people what they can and can't do basically on their property. And the way they're written, it's really, really hard to do that because they're written, it's kind of like the old pirate, they're written as guidelines.
Subsequently, if somebody takes this to court and we lose, the court will just throw out the entire.
Right, and it's great. They are great. I mean, there is a lot of really, really good stuff. I think some people thought I was throwing the baby out last time we looked at it. They're really, it's just, it comes down to, again, the bureaucracy, like, yeah, but okay, how do I implement that? Because there's some really well-written stuff, some really well-thought-out stuff. It's not just Alsatian houses, they've identified all these different types of houses and divided and devised descriptions of those. The issue comes right down to, okay, but what can I regulate and what can I say, yes, you need to do this, or no, you don't need to do this. And when you do this thing over here, this is how you need to do it and what it needs to look like. That's where we have some problems. So even if we said, even if you told me today, Scott, and I know you're not saying this, I'm just going to give you for example, you said, you know what, I want it to apply as we've been applying it, 96 properties, I want to have this be applicable just to those. As staff, we'd say, great, we will get on that. There are 2 additional things we're going to try to work with you on. One is, now we still have the guidelines, we're going to use the guidelines as they've been written, not looking to throw those out, we'll use those, and we'll use them on the 96 properties, and we'll define which those properties are and walk through that process, but we still got to figure out the guidelines, even for the 96 properties, how to work, what actually is applicable and what isn't, and what are these definitions that seem to conflict. We have a lot of work to do there, regardless of what other direction you give us. So I just want to be real clear about that.
So my point, before I was interrupted, was, well, I interrupted you, so it's all right. So I think that we need to first establish something, because we're not going to fix it tonight. We really need to reach out to the public on this. Before we reach out to the public, we need to put together some possibilities. But in the meantime, if somebody wants to do something, if you want, you don't have any more room. If you want to put a porch, you've already built out. If you want to put a porch cover that covers up that other really cool area, you have a process to go through that is not subjective. And maybe the appeals process is directly to city council so that we can deal with these things and so that somebody's not waiting out there in the wings just because we're going through due process. Put it back into so that we can be reasonable with this. We're here to represent the people, so maybe the appeals process is directly through city council. In the meantime, we go and talk to people that have set up and run and worked in historic districts where you have this mix of different areas, of different people, and have them give us some assistance on how to do that. And then from where we are, like where we can get to from here, we have to define what's regulated, how is it implemented, how is it enforced, and what can be put in administrative approvals that doesn't have to go through a subjective process. The people that I've talked to that are scared about this, there are some people that are fully in support of they call it protecting the infill, and some people describe that as a 12,000 square foot lot. Some people describe that as something that is within size and within scale of the neighborhood. Some people it's described in many different ways, but it's all subjective. It's, what do I like? I mean, there are things that I like that you don't like, things that you like that I don't like. So how do we put it into an objective process? That's the way that we've got to get to, and then take it out to the public and say, do you want us to protect the infill? Do you want us to protect this area? And if they don't, then we put it back to the 96 homes and structures. If they do, then we work through what that looks like. But in the meantime, if we don't have an appeals process that can take the subjectivity out of it, I think that we're going to have issues.
Why don't we just put it in an election? Explain it, let the public vote on it. You're basically saying, if you're one of these 446 property owners, you should be able to express your opinion whether you're willing to give up your rights to build what you want to build on your property.
Because it's not a binary decision.
Well, it is. If you own land, you have rights. You have a landowner's rights. And the question is, we've never said to the 446 landowners, maybe we took away your rights in 2017, but we've never talked about it.
Well, they took away their rights in 1975 when they passed the CZO. You no longer have the right to build closer than 20 feet from the street. You no
That's
longer
not
have
the rights we're talking about.
Those are
We're
the
talking
rights.
about
And
the
there
right
were
of
adequate
being
public hearings
the
before that.
Historic
Right.
Landmark Commission.
And that's my point, is you put
making
it out to-
decisions about non-historic property.
But if you put it out to a vote, if you look at, like, I do pay attention, a lot of attention to social media, the amount of misunderstanding about everything. You just put it out to a vote, and they're like, yes or no, without that education process. So I think that public hearings is a way for everybody to have a voice in this, to say, do we want some sort of regulation? Again, we had this place absolutely packed full of people that wanted some kind of control over their environment, over their neighborhood. So are we going to tell them, hey, we had the opportunity to protect this, but, we're not going to do it for you? Or do we have them as a part of that process and say, what in here is good and what in here is bad, and have it through a public process and go through that?
Okay,
What is wrong with that? I'm sorry, Sheena, you have not
Yeah.
had an opportunity.
for ordinances, to give us a Band-Aid while we hammer all this out, can we do an amendment that says, during, until the ordinance is rewritten and corrected, modified, whatever, these are the amended changes on how, what homes are covered, what properties are covered, the process, and if there's an appeal to come to city council. That way we have a Band-Aid until we get this all other hammered out.
The scope of things that you can do here, you can revisit the discussion in December and say, don't enforce the ordinance. I don't think that's the right thing. But it is a possibility.
Yeah, I'm just looking for something to cover us until we get this ordinance.
That's why I'm saying, I think if we do an appeals process to do that,
But that's why I said do an amendment that states that and it attaches to the ordinance to cover us until we can get the ordinance rewritten.
can we do that administratively without making a change? Just, no.
Okay, can't do any amendments?
So the answer is yes, you can amend that portion of the ordinance, that's just the appeals portion within, this designated section. Because this designated section has an appeals process that is different from the appeals process from the rest of the CZO. And so we can make that to where, it aligns better with that other section as well. And if the appeal board, if y'all want the appeal board to be the city council, then we can designate, the appeal board as to hear and make a determination on a historic, or the HBO's either administrative decision or the HSC's commission decision.
That way we have a Band-Aid until we can get this clarification and clear up all the gray and we can proceed because otherwise we'll have too many people in limbo.
I'm of the opinion that an unenforceable ordinance should not be enforced until it's fixed. And this one I see as unenforceable because the definitions are too vague. Nobody knows what it applies to. nobody voted on it, and it's just.
That's incorrect. And I'm gonna pause you there. Councilman King had a question.
Well, I totally agree with you. I think we need to have public comment on this. What they did in 2016, which, Scott, I'll disagree with you on this. You said they didn't know what they were doing. That council was very purposeful knowing what they did.
When did I say that?
You said earlier in the discussion that, we don't know, they didn't know what they were doing when they did this. I thought that's what you said. Maybe you didn't say. Okay, in 2016, they were purposeful, said that this Historic Landmark Commission now covers 2 zones. The residential historic zone and the downtown business historic zone. They were very purposeful in saying the HLC doesn't cover the 96 homes anymore. It covers these 2 zones.
Where's that?
That's in the 2016 ordinance that Deborah sent out to us.
I've got it right here. No, those were 2 different items on that agenda. Item 5 was about the Historic Landmark Commission, Section 23, being moved from the general ordinances into the CZO and adoption of the guidelines. Item 6 included the central historic zones and applied certain specific guidelines to those zones.
Did you read that one?
Okay, so
But anyway-
I want to take a quick pause here. I want to make sure we have some legal issues to work through. We don't need to work them through tonight. We need to work them through with our attorney.
Okay, what I was going to say, and we won't, you and I'll talk about this afterwards, but you all were our legal counsel back then. I can't believe we did this without a B being involved with Jeff Gardner at the time when they were doing this. Have you looked at your notes or?
So actually, yes, I did, because I figured that this question would come up. And so what I will tell you is from the review of what I see on our end, that there are a couple of times in the history of all things historic and historic commission where the firm, gave notice to previous administrations. You've got some issues with what you're doing and how you're doing it. We probably need to think about fixing that, and here's some recommendations. And what I could tell is that there was no follow-up with those particular types of recommendations. And then in other cases, just the adopting ordinance was sent over for review and approval, just for what I'm going to call reviewing and approving to form. In other words, is the form of our ordinance correct? Have we, done X, Y, and Z? It was not about the content of the ordinance, and that's two different things. So what I see, in the history of that is that, it would appear to me that there was, some attempts at, I'm going to use Councilwoman Martinez's language, there was some attempt at some Band-Aids, but those Band-Aids may have created some other issues by using inconsistent language, by using inconsistent terms, by establishing an appeals process for something with the zoning ordinance that was different from the general appeals process for the entire zoning ordinance. So there are those little, I say little technical things, but there are those types of technical things that, really, if those things get cleaned up, that takes a lot of the issues out of, just the overall interpretation of this section of the CCO.
Okay, and I guess but again, I think we should, as I said last time, we should just jump forward and correct this. We should be thoughtful and have citizens comment, because I really do believe that there is a lot of people that would just be as in favor of this as there are people that are going to be very concerned with it, and we do need to get that input from the citizens.
And I'll have to say it again, this is not a binary thing. There is not ultimate protection or no protection only. There is a range of protection that you can put in here. You can put very, very light protection on non-historic, on homes that are less than 50 years old. You can put extreme restrictions on things that are over 100 years old. We have the opportunity to find it in that gamut, and I think that's why we need to involve the public with this. Is there an administrative approval process that we could, if somebody were inclined to make that motion, is there an administrative approval or an approval process that would be less subjective, or, I don't know, I can't, I'm trying to think of an approval process. If something is reasonable, and somebody comes to us with something that makes sense and it's reasonable, and what I don't want to do is interject my opinions on what is good or what is bad. I don't want, and it doesn't matter if it's council or if it's HLC or if it's P&Z, having these subjective things are problematic.
The ordinance as it's written is objective. It's not, the issue is it's not enforceable in places. So what we could do as staff is look at the ordinance that's there, and to the degree that though, I mean, to your point, Mayor, there's two different things. So when you talk about there's what's written, and there's what you may want to change it to.
Right.
Right? What is written is intended to control and give design guidelines. They're not super stringent, really. I mean, it depends. The reason those historic districts are historic districts by the state and federal is because they identified, like I said, different epochs of historicity of houses. So it's not all Alsatian. Like it's Alsatian in 40s and 50s.
There's only one Alsatian house here.
Right. So they
And
have.
it wasn't built here.
They have a range and description of the different historic types of properties in those guidelines. The question is, what we can do as staff is we can go through the guidelines as they're written now and make recommendations, some of which may be in the notes from our attorney's prior review of these, to the extent that they look at content at any point in time. And we can refresh that with our planners and others who would give us recommendations and say, okay, this is how you take what is written and you would make it enforceable. Now, the next question is, to your point, are there any additional changes to the ordinance where you'd want to make it more restrictive for older properties, less restrictive for newer properties, some of those objective changes? But again, I think you, to your point, we may need to break it down into bite-sized pieces so we do them.
I think what you're saying is that you would want direction from council to enforce the things that are enforceable and don't enforce the things that are guidance or unenforceable. And that would be the guidance that we would give to you.
Or maybe just give you a list of all of what that looks like.
Well, can we give you that direction for now? If it's, and I think that actually.
There's like a handful of things that are enforceable as it's written, is my understanding.
Right.
Again, HPO is not here to help.
So I think that back to what most of council said last time was the things that are enforceable, enforce them. The things that are not enforceable, don't enforce them. And so if there's a lot of things that are not enforceable, you don't enforce them. I think that that's pretty straightforward as a stopgap.
Yeah, we shouldn't extend something that's not enforceable, and make it an enforceable.
Right.
So
Only enforce the things that are enforceable, and then the subjective opinion here would be that of the city attorney.
But that's the opposite of what we said last time.
No, what we said last time was enforce what's enforceable. Or we said enforce
the law.
Enforce the law, but part of the law is that, my opinion on law is if it's not enforceable, it's not legal. And so enforce the part of the law that is legally defensible. It's the same thing that we talked about with the airport zoning board. Don't pass a law that is not enforceable. We had a law that was passed, and there were portions of it that are not enforceable. And so if we say follow only the things that are legal and enforceable, then I think that covers it.
So I think this goes back to that appeals process. So that probably is the part, Cindy, that would give me some pause, because there are some items where that becomes sticky, Mayor, is if, I'm going to go back to the example we used in December, which is I have an applicant that comes to me and says, I'm looking for a certificate of appropriateness. Now, there's a lot of guidelines that are not enforceable. Right? They don't have they don't carry the weight of law. They're suggestions. But if you don't meet those suggestions, as we found, I mean, you just heard a report from Phil about a prior applicant. They made a sign application. Well, that sign was deemed to be inappropriate, so they did not get approval for that process. Well, then again, you have an enforcement. Then it's an enforceability issue. Was that enforceable to begin with or not? Well, it wasn't. But yet the HLC made a determination that said this is inappropriate. Well, what you probably need to do is put the stopgap you would need, the Band-Aid or whatever, I think, would be an appeals process to the council on those types of issues. And then that kind of, I mean, it becomes subjective. I'm going to just tell you, you're not going to get the objectivity that you'd like, because you're going to end up making decisions about, is a neon sign appropriate, or is this type of sign appropriate? Because that's what the HLC would, I'm just giving a very specific example, because that's what they just weighed in on. But what it would do, very much like in the same case with zoning and variance requests, is it would tell you where your code really needs more more enforceability, not objectivity, enforceability, because it's there. But as it's written, if I were to just go by and say, okay, but is this a guideline and a suggestion, or is this like hard enforceable? Most of what's there, stuff like that sign stuff and some of the things y'all have been reviewing, that purely based on like a bureaucratic, is this enforceable or not, it's not enforceable. So again, I just want to make sure you understand, when you tell me just enforce with things that are enforceable, that narrows it down really, really, really small, and it creates a legal issue for the people who get denied an application, because did they get denied based on something that was...
So I'm trying to unpack what you've been saying, and that's why, so I misinterpreted you, that's good. So I think then, let me try it again.
Okay.
I think that what you're recommending, and understanding staff does not set policy, but is looking out for our best interest, so I appreciate you doing that. So I think that to make this so that it is fair and appropriate, we just would make the recommendation that we change the appeals process to go to council as a part of the appeals process.
I think that's probably the best course for the time being.
Right.
What do you assume you help me? Do you think,
And
do you
can
agree
we-
based on the conversation you've heard or not?
So that, what I would say is that that's definitely an issue that needs to be addressed. It's probably one of the easier things to address, because the appeals process is, we can define that, and we can define the time limits, and we can define, what people's, remedies are thereafter, say we set it up that the appeal goes to city council, and if you're still aggrieved in that decision, then you appeal it on the district court. We can establish, those parameters fairly easy. And again, fairly easy. I mean, we still have to amend the ordinance and amend those provisions, and go through that process, and then we can just work through the other issues, as however you all see fit. Because like I say, as legal, I don't insert myself in your policy decision, but what I can say is that decision has to be made in order to make the rest of this flow, and to be able to give guidance to city staff if those questions come in, to me, saying, what do we do now? Where are we at?
That decision, the appeal...
Right, so the
make
appeal
change.
process, I mean, we can work on that based on, whatever guidance y'all want to give us, and then you guys can work out, figure out the rest of this is, what is the broader global policy decision regarding, preservation of historic properties.
Yeah. I think it's a bigger conversation, a longer conversation that I don't want to rush, but I also don't want to short circuit. So then would the council entertain making a, do we, I think that if they say, yes, we want to change this to the appeals process going through council, we would give you the direction to bring it to us in the next city council meeting to approve it at that point? Or how does that work?
So we can review the draft language. We still have to go through the notice provisions, and, because this is a change to the CBO, we have to go through P&Z, for that stuff first, and then come to council.
Okay.
But we can definitely put that in motion.
Just a lot of work to do something interim.
Does it require a public hearing? Because you're not changing, you're just changing the appeal process.
We are changing just the appeals process, so we're not changing an actual land use, so we don't actually have to notice anybody, but we still have to send this for change.
That's what I was thinking. It's not quite as onerous as like a zoning change, because you're not...
So I'm not changing the land use
Yes,
regulation.
my question is do I need to publish it in the paper as a change?
I don't think so. Because you don't have your other ordinance change.
So I do public hearings for changes on certain ordinances. But if we're not having a public hearing,
Let's work through those details, and we'll take a look at it. And it's not just about what we have to do, it's also what we should do. And I wouldn't mind opening up the conversation on it, with the public. Because if they're adamantly against it, we're going to hear about it. If they're adamantly for it, we're going to hear about it. And the nice thing about it coming through city council as the approval process is I guarantee you, if somebody is trying to do something that they feel like they should do, they'll come in mass. They'll bring their friends, their family, their neighbors, and we'll hear it in mass. And I think that that's a good process to go through. Hopefully we do that without them being angry. I'm sorry. Hopefully we can do that without getting them angry, but I think that we've got to go through that. And I will talk to you about it afterward, if that's okay. I promise. Is that, I guess I should ask council, is that what you feel like is the best thing to do?
I think that would be good for people that are concerned that the HLC, I think everybody's really scared now, HLC is going to tell us we can't do things. So if they do have the ability to bring it to city council as backup, I think that would calm fears. And I don't really see that being a big issue, but I think it would calm fears until we can grasp this whole topic.
Okay. Thoughts?
I will express mine as we work this through later
Okay. On the appeals process?
on the ordinance revisions.
We're talking about the appeals process right now. Are we amenable to having it come in front of city council?
Yeah, that would be the next best step, yes.
Okay. And Sheena?
I wanted to hear what Priscilla had, and if she was waving her hand.
Okay. I'll entertain that, please. Please come up to the microphone.
I just want to put one thing in front of y'all because.
And this is from the HLC?
HLC
Okay, thank you.
perspective. The last time we met and we heard all of this, we were told we will continue as we're going and we now will cover everything in the HE zoning area, right? Am I wrong about that? If somebody has to do something, if somebody has to do something that lives in there that doesn't have a historic home, they still have to ask for their permits. Community development, the HPO makes a determination as to whether or not they can approve it. If not, then it comes to HLC. Am I right?
Say that again?
I don't think so.
I think the process was to get a permit, you go in front of HLC.
Yes, if it's something that the
the 96
if it's
It's
something that the
this right here.
HPO can't make a determination on herself, as it has always been, there's certain things that they can say, okay, without it coming to HLC. But then when it comes to HLC, we got, at least from my perspective, we got the idea that, okay, now we're gonna be seeing many more things that come in front of us, okay? And we go just on the same kind of determinations that we've always been. We might have to approve a structure that the house was built in the 1980s or something like that, but we can do that. But we don't put it back to make them do something like a pioneer home. I mean, so we're gonna have to really start thinking a lot differently than we've always been told how to think, because we've
And you
only
might have to
looked
meet more often.
at the 96 structures, correct? We're gonna have to.
Well, I would disagree with you all that, because for instance, at our house, we put a playhouse in the yard, and that went before the HLC. And you all approved it, even though it complements the older ones,
Exactly,
but
that's
it
what.
didn't copy.
But it didn't copy, so, but
And
that's,
so
so
you
that's
all
what I'm
always
saying.
making
So
those
we're still,
determinations.
but I hear y'all talking about all of this appeal process and everything. So I guess I just would like to get some guidance that we're going to see a lot more now than we have been seeing in the past until other things are worked out.
Right.
Right, until other things are worked out. So we're going to, it's gonna upset some people, right? If they have to come to us because they never had to before, they just had to pull a permit. Right?
By what authority did we change, though?
We've already established that. We're not going to revisit that.
That's what was
The
established.
HLC has no authority over anything but the 96 homes.
We've already established this. We're not going to revisit it, please.
What do you mean we've already established?
We've talked about this ad nauseum tonight, and that is the fact that the legal opinion that came from our attorney, and if you would like to approach our attorney about this, after the meeting, you are welcome to do this, but what we have heard from our attorney is that the ordinance applies to the districts as described.
I don't think the city council has ever said to the 446 property owners who are in that area who don't own historical property.
I agree.
They have never been told, now you have to go through the HLC if you want to make a change to your property. It has never been that
If you were
way
going
in
to
this
apply
town,
for a
ever.
permit. We were not the ones that passed this ordinance. All we're saying is that we need to enforce the ordinance as it's enforceable right now, and we need to step carefully to make the appropriate changes through a
We've
public
been
process.
saying all night, enforce what's enforceable and don't enforce what's not enforceable. So we haven't decided what's not enforceable.
Right, we are going to go through that process. I don't want to revisit this because we have talked about it already.
But
and
you're making the assumption
So
that
what
we've
we're saying
already
is,
decided we're going to enforce all of it.
no, we made that, that's in the ordinance. That is in the ordinance. That is what the ordinance says. That is the legal opinion from our attorney. That is what is in the ordinance. If you don't agree with that, I will tell you, please get with our attorney afterward to have that conversation with her, because she has expressed that to us multiple times.
You're right, though. It did not go to a vote.
It did not go to a vote.
I'm
I'm not saying that it was implemented, I'm not saying that it was implemented appropriately. I'm not saying that this
The
is
only
what.
thing we've got is the presentation that the HPO gave.
No,
at the
you had
public
an
meeting.
opinion from your city attorney.
But neither, the AG district is neither a state nor national designation.
That's correct.
That is in the ordinance.
And the city as a local government can establish, you know,
But
a historic district, and so, but
just because it's called.
that's what I'm saying, yeah, I mean, that's what's written into the ordinance, that's how it currently exists. Now, what that process looked like and all of that piece, you know, I haven't been tasked yet, you know, to do all the research, because that's gonna mean, you know, going back to every ordinance, every set of minutes, you know, going, you know, and I would suggest to you, somebody probably needs to do all of that, and then step two out of all of that is, did all of that get codified into the city's code of ordinances? Because, again, remember, that is
I have a question. Since 2007, when the two ordinances were passed by the city council, and the city did not cause the 446 properties to go through that process, are we going to go back? Are we going to direct the city staff to go back to 2007 and look at every change that was made and approved to all those 446 properties, and then tell the property owners they have to undo them because they were never approved by the
Okay, now we're
HLC?
going a little bit ridiculous. I'm gonna close this down unless we can get to a point where we can have some, it's like saying, I saw you speeding last week, so I'm gonna give you a ticket this week. You don't do that. We're getting a little bit ridiculous here.
That's
So-
not ridiculous, that's a reasonable question.
No, well, I
So
agree with you.
the answer, you know, from the legal perspective is no, sir. You know, that would not be, but what we do need to do is, you know, to kind of put this to bed once and for all, is to track that history in great detail. Let us give you an analysis of what, you know, the actual, you know, history is, because again, like I said, sometimes what was intended, and this is not the only place that I've seen this before, you know, we've seen it in other areas of the city's code, what was intended versus what got written, you know, on a couple occasions has been very different things, because, you know, laypersons drafted, and they, you know, drafted in a certain manner, which changed the intent and was a substantive change, and it just wasn't caught at the time.
And I apologize for raising my voice, Councilman Dyer. I'm really frustrated with this because it's a tough situation. And I don't see that there is one very specific, very direct answer. And so I think that we need to figure out something that is in between. I think that we've discussed this enough. I would entertain a motion from anybody. And I'm going to step 100% out of this and just say I would accept a motion.
I would make a motion that the city staff work with the city attorney to come up with a simple stopgap measure, an ordinance change that directs decisions of the HLC. The appeals process would be to city council.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, further discussion.
One other question. What is the appeal process right now for the HLC? You don't know?
I do know.
Oh, what is it?
And that's why I would say it is mechanically incorrect and we need to fix it.
But you can't tell me what it is.
You can read the ordinance, yeah.
I'll be happy to tell you.
It doesn't already say come to city council, right?
Right.
Okay, that's all I need to know.
Right. And I'll be happy to tell you when I'm not being recorded.
Okay.
So further discussion. I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
Abstain.
What does that do?
You cast the tie vote.
What's that?
Or does the abstention vote with the,
The abstention makes it a 2-2 vote.
that's what I thought, so you cast the tie vote.
I didn't want to vote.
Sorry, you get a vote. Hey, you get a vote.
I don't like to vote.
Wrong subject.
Maybe you could ask the question, is there any change to that, modification to that amendment that would?
That's a great idea. Is there?
Good job, Larry.
See, I don't mind taking a stand, but I don't like being, I have the ability to speak a whole lot, and so I want to leave the decisions to our city council people. Does anybody have a modification to this motion that they would entertain to make it something more appropriate? Is that a no? Okay. Aye.
Mayor votes aye.
So with your
Don't
vote,
like
motion
motion
carries.
What staff will do is work, and again, the vote, just understand, we haven't been, you're not changing anything tonight. We will draft an appeals process, and then they'll come back to you, and then we'll have to go through that process we outlined through P and Z, et cetera.
Okay. I just want to take a second to say, this is one of the really, we have a lot of difficult things to deal with here. I appreciate you showing up. I appreciate you going through this process and be willing to voice your opinions for the people that you represent. So thank you for doing that. I'm sorry that it was difficult today, but this was a good process. All right. Next item is executive session. Pursuant to the Texas Open Meetings Act, Chapter 551 of the Texas Government Code, Section 551.071, entitled Consultation with Attorney, and Texas Government Code, Section 551.086, entitled Competitive Utility Matters, the City Council, as the governing body of a public power utility and public gas utility, will meet in closed session to discuss competitive matters, including the gas system sale. Number 2, Texas Government Code, Section 551.072, entitled Deliberation Regarding Real Property, to deliberate the purchase of real property that is approximately 6.75 acres in Medina County for future public works utility facility. We're going into executive session at 8:34. I had to double check and make sure I was reading the analog right.
Live stream is still on these days.
Hey, Noah, did you get that refrigerator put in?
Yes, you got it all cleaned up.
It actually turned on? Sounds good.
Oh, Mr. King. See you way too often, sir. I was really impressed with you trying to counsel that young man. Yeah, you know what?
Yes.
I shall be in Denton at that time, so.
Y'all want to buy the liquor on today, stay with that.
Haven't been on the base in 5 years.
Oh, wow.
That's a long way out.
It's hour, 2 hours.
Hour and a half.
They're nice people. Anyway,
What'd you do?
Oh, this one. Putting the wrong glasses on. I have like 3 pair of them. All right, we are coming back from executive session at 9:17. There are no actions from the executive session. Oh, that was both the next 2 agenda items. Last agenda item, discussion on future agenda items. One, moving regular council meeting a week later to January 30th. Is everybody okay with that?
Yep.
I make a motion, we move the,
You don't have to make a motion.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll just call a special meeting. We just have to have a total of 4.
And you're canceling the regular.
Canceling the regular meeting and putting the special meeting.
I'll be at that January 30th meeting.
So I will be
I've had a
in.
response from everybody.
Okay.
Everybody will be there, right?
What's that?
You'll be there also.
I will be there on the 30th, yes. I will be in someplace in the Caribbean the week before.
Oh, I don't think we ought to move the meeting then.
Other future agenda items, there is one, Councilman Mers asked us to move the discussion about the airport zoning until he was able to attend on the 30th. So that works out well for him. Is there anything else that we have missed that is on the pending agenda or that has been added and not been addressed?
Are we going to have workshops on the repairs that need to be made to ordinance 2017-05?
That's not a bad idea. Well, I'm trying to think about what the process looks like. Yeah, let's just, if you don't mind, stick that on the pending list.
Okay.
And then we'll figure out what that looks like, because we will probably have to have some kind of work session before we can bring it to a public meeting, just for the ordinance that we discussed earlier.
Yeah, I think that, that's what I thought, that's what I was clarifying. I think that what needs to happen there is, we need to do, as you intimated, we really need to do a legal review of how that ordinance got adopted.
Yeah.
I don't know.
We have to understand our current situation, and then we have to prepare for what are our options? Not what are we going to do, but what are our options? And figuring out what that looks like from next to nothing to next to everything. And not hitting either one. Okay. Anything else that I've missed?
No, other than I'm going to miss the second meeting in February.
Oh, you're going to miss the Dream Sites thing.
The Dream Flights?
Yeah.
No, the meeting, we're going to have, they're going to give the presentation. I'll watch it.
I'll record it.
Record it for me.
I'll record it specially for you.
Please do that, please do that.
All right, anything else? It is 9:20 and we are adjourned. Thank you.
By the way, we're going to